This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
The final race of Season 5 of the Neo Endurance Series. This is the Race Spot 24 Hours of Le Mans. It's early morning here now, 8 hours to go, and this is hours 16 to 20. We're going to be bringing you coverage of double points for the final 24-hour race. Means that all three of our championships are going to be decided here. I'm David Haynes. In the production is Hugo Luis. Joining me for at least a little bit will be Randy Cheneth, and for this 4 hours also Lorenzo Bonda with me. Everything we do made possible by the people on screen here. Track cameras by Istvan Baloff, overlay design Andreas Werner of Andvern Design, Simon Grossman of Aptiony, and Nick Tisson with live timing. Thanks for joining us here on Race Spot. And Randy, I think everyone just tuning in right now, you're going to bring us up to speed on where the race stands with 2/3 done, 1/3 remaining.
It's been a crazy last 8 hours, which is what I've been covering. So I pretty much covered from the darkness to where we are now, which is sort of getting in towards the afternoon. It's been in towards the morning, I should say, rather. So the track temperature, everyone is chasing the track temps right now. It's slowly coming up for what we've been reported, but the way drivers have been talking, I think that there's other parts of the tracks that are warmer from where that measurement is actually taken. So everyone has been really struggling with an oversteer condition is how their cars have been changing over about the last hour. LMP1 has been pretty stagnant. Movano has been pretty much dominating that category overall. They were 1-2 at one point, but SimRC Emerald being able to really separate them. P2 really similarly, but Torque Freak Racing has just been dominating this race. A couple fights up and down the category, but for the most part, it's that 48 car that seems like it's their race to lose. ET is where things really, I think, are up to potentially change. There's been a lot of interesting tire strategy, and most of the leaders are still relatively close to one another. And we have a second place running car, MS Spy Esports number 75, championship leader coming into this race, who've been on an absolute tear. We just saw them catch and pass the 96 Williams Jim Esports black car just a handful of laps ago, and the other the other segment of the race, and they've just been basically on an absolute barnstormer. Interesting to see how tire strategy changes for these guys with the temps coming back up. There were a lot of triples and whatnot with the darkness because of the cool temperatures. It's good for the tires. Now that the temps are coming back up and people are fighting loose, will people be potentially pushing triples or even quads the way they were through the darkness? And of course, fuel economy, always a big question mark as well.
Yeah, exactly, especially around a circuit like this. So much time spent at full throttle, and the difference between going one extra lap or not in your stint, quite a significant distance because of the length of the lap. Riding on board right now, MSI Esports and Mark Perez, these are your championship leaders. The second place on track right now, and the leaders are Logitech G Altus Esports. Whoever finishes ahead of the other between those two will become your GT class champion for season 5 of the Neo Endurance Championship. So a lot on the line for these guys, and a lot of gap that Mark Perez has got to pull back. It's flying along, but it is still a minute and a half or more that the next car is up the road, Lorenzo.
Absolutely, he's still more than 1 minute and a half seconds to the Logitech G Altus Esports Neo car. Simon Fagel at the wheel right now. I think they just had a pit stop. So the Australian Simon on the wheels, and that's why the gap actually get down to 20 seconds. MSI still to stop, but still a very open ground battle coming into these final 7 hours between those two teams. As you said, points are double, so it's all on the line over here for the GT class.
And those double points, that's not a gimmick to me, because if you have double points for the season finale and other championships, maybe feels a bit gimmicky, but here, having the 24-hour race worth double the points of a 6-hour race, it's only worth half the points per hour, even if the round itself is worth double points.
Yeah, at first you actually got me lost in mathematics, which is late in the morning over here. But yeah, it now every point will basically count. Every point that you had on those 6-hour races, and maybe on the 12 hours, like the Sebring race we had, basically will be very important. How well was your team consistent throughout this championship? As we mentioned, the MSI basically didn't win one of the races on the GT class. If you look at the results, 7 points. The best result was a 2nd place in both Suzuka and Spa. They haven't won a single race whatsoever, but in their favor, Logitech had the DQ, not a DQ, but the DNF at Sebring, and only a bad result at Interlagos. So that's why the battle is so close between them and so open doors, and the skill level between the drivers is basically the same.
So your standings coming into this round up on your screen right now, we just saw that in Prototype 1, Thrustmaster Movano number 3 car, handily leading the points there, and they lead out on track right now. Your Prototype 2 standings, Ava Vivatic come into this with a 20-point lead, knowing that first place here at Le Mans is worth 40 points. Talk Freak Racing lead that right now, so that's going to be one to watch later in the race. And what we were just talking about here is your standings for the Grand Touring class. MSI Esports, just consistent points but no wins. And that's what you were talking about, Lorenzo. They have 67 points. Logitech G Altus Esports, they've won the last 2 races on the trot. They lead right now, but trail in the standings by 5 points. The win worth 40 points, and second place worth 28. It's a 12-point swing, a 12-point difference between first and second, and it's close enough that it just means whoever wins will win the championship between those two teams that are first and second out on track.
Yeah, basically that's what you said. And if we are to look in the PA and the Prototype 2 standings, it basically becomes a mathematical issue right now, because if we are to look on the standings, Ava Vivatic sits at 5th position right now on the track in their class, and Torque Freak, as mentioned by Randy, is dominating the race from start to finish. So there's a good chance, and a good chance, the long to go, that Torque Freak could actually themselves in the position of being the championships by the checker flag.
Yeah, exactly. A 24-hour race to finish out the season. There's just so much that can and does happen in a 24-hour race. Even the 20-point lead that Ava Vavatic had coming into this is it had not been enough to assuredly seal up the championship for them. And Randy Chenna, thank you so much for joining us, and I'll let you say any goodbyes you might want to say.
Oh, well, just thanks to everyone who's been part of the last 8 hours that I've worked with Cam and everyone else, and good luck to you guys for the next segment. And honestly, good luck to that second place running GT car, because I think the way anyone wants to see a 24-hour race come to an end, and especially a double points 24-hour race, is to see that second place car chase down that race leading car and have them be able to fight for it like that. I think even those guys at Logitech would be okay with a nice fight going to the end for the championship. So that's definitely what I'm pulling for. Not to mention that car's got yellow on it, and yellow is my favorite color, so I think that makes sense. That makes sense in my mucky brain, so I'm going for it.
I'll take that. Thanks, Randy. Thank you so much for your work putting together the non-stop 24 hours live coverage of this 24-hour race. It's a great feat, and we can't do it without people like you, so thank you.
Yep. Thanks, brother. Good luck, guys.
Let's go.
Well, Lorenzo, we've talked about how the championship standings are at and what the permutations would be based on where the cars are at right now on circuit. I guess people like Le Mans. It's a great circuit. It's a very historic race, but one of the problems we have with how large the circuit is, with how much room there is a lot of the cars are spread out. There's not really that many battles we can focus in on out there right now. A lot of them are sort of being waged in pit strategy or by long distance, and even 30 seconds separating a car would feel a little bit of a close battle to us right now.
Yeah, people like to compare Monza to more of a strategy game than like we would see Daytona, the Daytona 24, where the cars are more clustered, you know, one close to one another, multiple classes, then they are basically spread thin one another, so you get battles every single time. It's non-stop. So over here is more of, I just said, strategy game. Then you come into those two final hours. Whenever you come down to those two final stints, pit services, then you're gonna see the clothes being thrown out and see if your strategy paid off and you are put into a proper position for you to make any moving up in the field or not.
Yeah, riding on board right now, class leader in LMP2. Dirk Van Tulden for Talk Freak Racing. We said these guys were 20 points off the championship leaders, Ava Vavatic, coming into this round, doing everything right now to potentially, at the final race, be able to take that lead away and crown themselves a Neo Endurance Series champion for Season 5. Great onboard, and I'm a fan of these LMP2 cars. Honestly, I am. I love driving them because they're just a little bit of old school to them without the hybrid energy. That there's nothing wrong with that. Are they serving a slowdown there, Lorenzo?
You mean Truck Freak?
Yes.
Let me look. No, they are not. I think they would just went to. Oh, they did serve a slowdown. Yes, they did serve. It's because those four chicanes are very tricky, because depending on how you come into the fourth chicane, how deep you attack it, you can get basically a 1 second slowdown, and you're basically gonna have to pay that at the end of the last chicane, coming down to the main straight, to the start finish straight. So yeah, and there we got a car spun at the entry of Tata Rouge, at the exit of Tata
Was that
Rouge.
Triton Racing? It definitely looked like a Porsche 911 RSR.
Yeah, that might be Triton.
Blue.
It is Triton, yes.
So Victor Smolicek having some problems there. I'm not sure if he kept out of the barrier or not. Was the tweak to the left rear of the car from before that? Looks like he has kept it out of the barrier. Not the, I mean, great view of the beautiful French forests. Not a whole lot about what his issue was here. Very early, that's become oversteer. Randy mentioned that some of the things that a lot of the drivers are struggling with is the track heats up. Well, balance is going away a lot from some of our GT drivers. Maybe race clutch have so narrowly avoided that as well. So Lorenzo, your views on that one right there?
It's the same thing. They basically came into Tata Rouge and lost the back end of the car. Fortunately for them, the race clutch, the LMP2 didn't just like home run into a deeper space, but on the downside, it actually had a little bit of an edge and unfortunately clipped the left rear wing, so it's gonna take a bit of precision coming down into the main streets and also maybe a little bit of the top speed.
So yeah, you're right there. Race clutch very narrowly avoiding a pretty big incident, sensibly just opening up the steering, running around the other car. So a bit of excitement that they wouldn't have wanted for Triton Racing there. Those guys currently running in the GTE field, a bit down the order, I think. Yeah, 11th in class for them, so that's not so bad, but they've just lost some time with that issue.
But if we were to talk back again on the GT battle, the lead GT battle, it's getting more interesting a bit, even though they are still that, stint difference between MSI and the Logitech G Altus Esports. If you see the gap when Simon got out of the pits was around 20 seconds. Mark is so much quicker and so much smoother into the turn. He's actually shredding time against Simon. Last lap for Simon was a 3:47. He's about to finish his lap. That will be another 3:47. So Mark again, if he goes all right, he comes to the pit. But that's a really good stint for the MSI team.
Yeah, just lap after lap, pulling a second or so out of Simon Feigl. Obviously, they looked a little bit closer that time because Altus Esports are now 3 laps into their stint, and MSI Esports are just coming to the end of a 15-lap run, needing to come into the pit lane this time. So, adjusted, the gap was about 20 seconds and a pit stop. And we saw Marc Perez has been in this car for a long time, and it looks like he's staying in. So, an absolute monster drive from Marc Perez to still be so quick, and he's been in that car, what did we hear, going on 5 hours now or more?
And maybe 5 hours, and 5 hours is doable, but I already did 5 hours on the Le Mans 24 on the official ones, like second to last year, but it's really complicated because you need to be alert every single stint. You don't have to relax, even though we say, oh, you can relax on the Mulsanne. No, you cannot relax, and you need to extract the maximum out of your car. So I want to see Mark doing his stint and how that will compare to his previous stints. So far all his stints have been really consistent and very fast, so I expect some of the same for this probably fifth and final stint.
Yeah, Biela Racing Team Euronics also on the lane, I think. Pit stops for a few of the teams out there. So Efkan Beriki behind that car now, looking at the stop time, coming up to 30 seconds. This is about when expect to see the car go up on the jacks if they're taking tyres at this stop, but no tyres, it's just 35 seconds of fuel, and that car goes back out. 4th place, and that's definitely well inside the top 5. Any problems from the cars ahead, even minor ones, could elevate Biela up onto the podium. Williams Gym Esports Black currently scored in 2nd place. Probably need to come down onto the pit lane soon. So 1st down to 4th and 5th here. It's not a huge gap, and we've got 7 hours and a half remaining. Any problems for anyone? They're not laps clear. There's teams behind that would get ahead of them, cost them positions if they had to make any minor repairs to their car. Any extended pit lane trips would cost any of those teams in the podium.
It does cost them the podium, but Neo is actually bringing up some really cool stats about those pit stops per se. How much you can gain over a pit stop and how the strategies pan out. Basically, GT doing no tires is basically 30 seconds, and the P1 is around 10 to 15 seconds. Just the service, I don't mean the entire entry to exit, which is around, I would say, 40 seconds. So it's a really interesting introspective to see, and I can see it also that the it gave me a blank, but here we go. The MSI Esports didn't take fuel, didn't take tires for this one, so I think Mark Perez might be quite triple or quite stealing the tires, so it will be really interesting to see if that drop off of tires will actually have some effect when the track is getting more hotter. We're at 21, it's not far from the night. It was around 18, but still is a very noticeable difference.
I did hear, I think, that the pit stop before the one they've just completed for MSI Esports, they did take new tyres, and Logitech G Altus Esports were hoping that was one of the reasons that their gap was coming down just a little bit. How about this this angle we were just watching? Those poor cones. There's plenty of them around here at Le Mans because there's plenty of runoff area, so they're using them to demarcate where you can and can't use the track. Tell me, Lorenzo.
Can we give some ass for the cones?
Yes, those cones, they serve us well, and their service should be respected. Unfortunately, not all of them make it to the end of a 24-hour race. As drivers look for all of the width of the track that they can use to open up the corner for their turn in, to track out as far as possible. Pit stop now for Williams Gym Esports Black. Were in second place in the GT category. I mentioned that they'd just slipped ahead of MSI Esports through the pit cycle, and here they are on the pit lane. MSI come back through to resume second place. Moreno Sirica behind the wheel still, and as we know, about 35 seconds is just fuel and a minute is fuel with tyres. The graphic updates there to show that Williams Gym Esports now back into third place. Spins those old tyres up just a little bit getting out of the pit box, but as you see, 34 seconds, just fuel, no tyres. Williams Gym Esports back out into third place in GT class.
Back out in the third in the class. Meanwhile, the Srn Motorsports Orange is nearly a lap down, so not much of a threat coming right behind them. So the only way that actually becomes a four-way fight is only if something happens to either one of those cars. They lose time, and Srn just does the best stint ever, and they actually close down the gap. But I don't think that is happening. So for now, only a three-way battle.
Yep, indeed, and where Williams Gym Esports Black have come out is between MSI Esports and Biela Racing Team, who saw their pit stop earlier, and they, I think, are only just ahead of SimRC.de Crimson, so while the gap is not insignificant for the lead of the race, for second through to fifth, or maybe even sixth place, it's all looking pretty close. And I think right now, might like to do a top 8 rundown of each of our class, because that'll give us a good idea, not just of the lead battles, but of sort of deeper into the pack of the different categories. That persistent little graphic of the Ferrari there, just covering up part of my vision, and there it goes. But here we see, this must be LMP2 we're looking at right there. Torque Freak Racing leading by nearly a lap, 3 minutes 17 seconds over IRDK Endurance, then TNT Racing, then Team Hoisingfeld in fourth. Ava Vivatic, points leaders in fifth place. If they can get maybe 2 more positions or a couple more positions up there, it's possible they could still hold on to the championship for Ava Vivatic. But at the moment, fifth place wouldn't be enough. Torque Freak are doing all the right things. Very, very significant lead. Sixth place, Team Mad. Seventh is Inertia Sim Racing. And then eighth is Race Center Vibe Sports. And Lorenzo, I'll let you do whichever is the next class that comes up.
Alright, let's try to do GT while the pit stops are being sorted. But for now, Logitech G Altus Esports Neo number 83 is first. Williams G Sports E Black is in third. MSI Sports is in second. So because I got betrayed by iRacing over here, the results. But MSI is in second. Williams GIM Esports Black is in third. Biela Racing Team Euronics is in fourth. SimRC.de Crimson is in fifth place. Sixth goes to Red Face Racing. Seventh is Srn Motorsports Orange. And rounding out our top 8 is the Biela Racing Team Euronics number 2.
And that there between fourth and sixth place in GTE, that's what I was talking about. That's some of the closer racing we've got right now, where it's just 6 seconds or so that the number 85 Biela Racing Team Euronics is clear of SimRC.de 77. And then it was only a few seconds behind Jürgen Frank to the 6th place car. Of course, I'll say it before, I'll say it again. Double points on the line for this round means that every position that you gain can be worth quite a lot for your championship hopes, your hopes of maybe picking up some prize money, maybe sealing the championship, or your hopes of just moving a little bit further up the order to seal yourself an entry into next season or whatever your goal would be.
I was going to mention that actually. Sorry, I was going to mention the importance of being in a good spot so you can have a reserve slot maybe for next season or a preference slot when it comes to next season.
So now, not doing them all in order, but that's fine because we always do them fastest to slowest. So here is top 8 in your LMP1 class. Number 3 car from Thrustmaster Movano Racing, dominant all season. Shaky start in the first 4 hours or so of this race, but they've put their foot down and not lifted it since. Leading by over 2 minutes from SimRC.de, number 7 car. The sister car Thrustmaster Movano Racing, the number 4 car, is in 3rd position, and then behind them, about 20 seconds back, is the Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports $#18 LMP1 Neo entry, and then a bit more of a gap back there to 5th place, Wyvern Racing, 2 laps off the lead. So are Team Chimera, so are VRT E-Racing. Their purple livery always stands out on track. And in 8th place, Simitok Esports. So that is your top 8 in all the categories as they run right now, and gives you an idea of where some of the battles are, not just for the lead of each category, but a little bit further down. What we will do right now, though, is that we've got someone who's going to have a word with us. We saw a little bit of a battle earlier between Trick Sim Sports and Graphite Racing, and we've got Kevin O'Keefe, who's been from that team, Graphite Racing. How are we doing, Kevin?
Well, it was a battle until I got in the car.
Don't beat yourself up for it, because 13th place as one of the invited entries, I do believe, certainly coming into this round with not as much maybe experience of the series, but still some sports car experience. How have you found the first third of this race?
Well, I'm not a member of Graphite. Graphite has two members, and they needed more drivers for this 24-hour race, so they added 3 more. They just kind of picked them up off the street. I'm one of those 3. So for us, it's pretty much been drama-free. We started, I think, 18th or 19th, and then we got a 1-minute penalty. So we've been down the order, fighting our way back all race. We definitely have top 10 pace. It's just a question of crawling our way back up there.
The GTE category is the category with the most number of cars in it, the most numerous of entries, which means that 13th place would be maybe a little bit poor in LMP1 or LMP2, but in the GTE class there's more cars, you can more easily make up some spots, and you're probably not embarrassing yourself as badly as I guess you might assume in a different class. What can you do from here with 7.5 hours remaining?
The rest of the drivers that are going in the car we have pace. So we're 90 seconds behind the 95 and a minute behind the 91. And before I got in the car for my double, that was like 45 seconds and 1 minute. So I think we can make those up. So that's 2 spots right there. So that's the goal. But going back to what you said, speaking for the 2 members from Graphite, the goal heading into this race is basically, don't finish in last and don't embarrass ourselves, because I think everyone knows we're stepping up in class here. So I mean, if the race ended right now and we got 13th, I think we'd all be very happy with that.
Yeah, just a few laps separated from your class leader, really not so far adrift of that. What's been maybe the biggest learning curve for you in this race?
Well, for me personally, this is only the second time I've ever driven this car. I drove 2 stints in the Daytona 24 Hours in this car, and this is only the second ever race for me. I'm normally a HPD driver and a Mercedes AMG driver, so I don't have a lot of experience with the GTE. So just the whole practice for this race was a big learning experience.
Yeah, so while we've got you, any shout outs, any thanks that you'd like to give out on behalf of yourself and then also from Graphite Racing, who you were a guest driver for?
Well, that's why I wanted to come in here. I was in here earlier in the race, just thanking Graphite for having me. They put the call out for drivers, and I said, "Oh, an opportunity to race Neo. I'm not going to pass that up." So I put my hat in. They graciously accepted me, and everybody in Neo has been very welcoming. And of course, if I'm giving shout outs, well, my channel's the warm up lap on YouTube, and coming up for the Nürburgring 24 hours, we're going to have myself, Marcus Ambrose, and Owen Kelly in the race. So it's going to be a fun time.
It does indeed sound like a fun time, and I hope you enjoy yourself, and I hope you enjoy yourself the remainder of this race too. So there we are. Kevin O'Keefe has been driving with Graphite Racing, the number 92 Ferrari 488 GTE, currently in 13th position, but we heard from him. They have some aspirations to move up a little bit further up the grid, Lorenzo.
Yeah, especially for a team that you mentioned came up as an invitation. They are the, if I could be really wrong, I was looking right now at the standings, but they won the GT Pro category and the DGFX championships. So they are a very capable team, not being last. Their objective is already really good, but being within a midpoint contention in this already stacked GT class that we have in Neo, it's already a great thing, a great result, and we can see them moving up spots if they do the right strategies and keep the car on track with a good pace.
Yeah, certainly. One of the ones I've got my eyes on though is 4th and 5th in our GTE class, because looks a little bit to me like SimRC.de have been closing in, putting in some quicker laps than Biela Racing Team. So Jürgen Frank obviously working that Porsche just, goodness, last time by about a second and a half faster than Biela Racing Team. So that's an interesting position that could change sometime in the future.
It could, and while you were watching this battle, I'm not watching a very close battle per se, but for now it's a battle to keep an eye on if everything just goes this way between Ava Vervatic and Team Weiskenveld, because right now Fabrice Cornelis is within the wheels of the number 39 Ava Vervatic car, and he's been flying around the track. We know Fabrice is one of the was from Pure, is driving right now for Ava Vervatic just for this event. And so far he's proving why he's one of the quickest drivers you can have in sim racing. Just an average of 131 lows to 131 mid highs, and quickly catching up Ronnie Fantini right ahead of him.
Yeah, you can see that lap 273, lap 274, he's pulled some of that gap back down. But lap 272, where Fabrice Cornelis made a 3-second gain, and you can see underneath Ronnie Fantini that he had a 3-minute 34 on that lap. Clearly some kind of problem with traffic or an issue or just a little mistake costing Ronnie Fantini a couple of seconds, and that's going to give some hope to Ava Vervatic and to Fabrice Cornelis, because I'll do the numbers, I'll crunch them later on, but every position that Ava Vervatic can gain puts them a little bit closer to putting the pressure on Talk Freak Racing for the championship.
Absolutely, because right now it's very resembling of the Formula E race where I think Prost and Degrassi had between points, and they were fighting for the fastest lap to get that extra point and then win the championship. So that's what basically is right now, but instead of fastest lap, they're fighting for positions.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking at the points structure right now for this championship. A win normally worth 20 points, but here the double points in endurance finale, of course, then 40 points. Meanwhile, 6th place is 10 points, so double that would be 20. So as it stands right now, Talk Freak, who 20 points behind Ava Vervatic in the standings coming into this, would grab themselves 40 points, but Ava Vivatic for 5th place would grab 22 points, would win the championship by 2 points if they held on to 5th place. If they dropped back to 7th, they would lose it. If they dropped back to 6th, it would be a tie, and presumably some form of tie break would have to be made. And in that case, I'll look further down the rules in a little second, but if it's a tie break based on the number of wins, then I think that would go to Ava Vivatic, as Fabrice Cornelis is very aggressive through the traffic there, putting a lap on that GTE car. He's trying to close that gap down. But now that I've looked at the point structure, now I've crunched those numbers, I believe that even with Talk Freak Racing winning, picking up the full 40 points for winning the double points round, 5th place would be enough for Ava Vivatic to become the LMP2 champions.
Yeah, it would be a very, very close battle with if your mathematics are right, David. Because I'm not. It's like I already said. It's late in the morning. This guy I really don't want to do mathematics on the top of my head. I'm probably gonna get some numbers wrong and some subtractions and additions wrong as well. So I'll leave the mathematics to you, and so I don't do any memory on the transmission and then get picked on later by the people.
Yeah, fair. So quick laps still from Fabrice Cornelis. Even though we've now done the numbers and said that 5th place might be enough for Ava Vivatic, I'm sure he wants to put on a good showing, and he's not here to just complete the laps. Fabrice Cornelis will be someone looking to maybe move that car up some positions, show some teams that he's still quick, he's still a very rapid driver who you can rely on. So, looking once again to your GTE field, and this is one we'd mentioned that 4th, 5th and 6th were all rather close. Redface Racing suddenly have an absolute turn of pace compared to SimRC.de. Jürgen Frank is not putting in bad laps, but this is flying from Laurent Miskovitz. You see that a second, 0.2, a second and a half, another 1.2 seconds, the most recent lap. Only a few laps, half a stint or so, and Redface Racing will find themselves knocking on the door of a top 5. Had pretty reasonable pace all race, and it's showing right now. Lorenzo, you think that they can close up that gap?
Let me look at the gap between laps. One thing we have to consider is that the SimRC, wide entry into the Dunlop chicane. But looking at the lap perspective, they're running 348s all around. Meanwhile, Redface is on the 347 middles. So I believe within 2 to 3 laps, if you keep going like this, there's no hampering or hindrance from the P1s and P2 that might overtake them and overlap them. It's a possibility. It could become a reality.
Yeah, so suddenly we've got a little bit more action for the GT cars, because SimRC closing Biela Racing Team, all the while being closed even faster by Redface Racing. It's a real convergence happening for 4th place in the GTs right now. We ride on board with Jürgen Frank. It's like a little bit of fuel saving for him, maybe a little bit of lift and coast, I'm not sure. Certainly if you're close to being able to put an extra lap onto your stint around here, then it can definitely be an advantage with how long the laps are. Looking obviously nearly 4 minutes for a GTE car.
Yeah, so it's becoming a really interesting battle to brew, but so far it hasn't been, the kind of battle, not the kind of battle that we wanted, but it hasn't been forming the battle that we want to have. I thought actually this battle is going to brew by the final 3 laps of their stints. So far they are into 4 and they are marking each other apart. They're being affected by traffic, so whenever they get clear laps, then we should get a clear view on how their pace are, and actually something could happen down the line.
certainly could. That's really the motto of Le Mans and endurance racing, is something could happen down the line.
You know, the fun thing is, people don't take Le Mans by we take Le Mans by the track that it is. It might be a relaxing track with all these straights, but this is probably one of the most tricky tracks, or more like poisonous tracks in terms of racing, because the slightest gap of disattention, misattention that you might have, you might face yourself facing a barrier or even a technical difficulty such as engine blown or something of the sort.
Yeah, indeed, we've seen engines blow, we've seen people spin somewhat randomly, and I think we've just seen a change for position, third place in the LMP1 class. Thrustmaster Movano Racing, the number 4, have just come out of the pits, where they had a longer stop than Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports, the number 18 car, who are also just 4 laps out of the pits, because it's new tyres for the number 4. So Florian Kruger has gotten himself by Thrustmaster Movano Racing, but who now have the newer tyres. So this battle could continue if Philip Bauer has the pace with the new tyres and Florian Kruger doesn't have enough of a setup advantage or enough speed with himself compared to the other driver to continue to pull away. So just over a second now, and you see those 2 cars. That's for the final step on the podium. Thrustmaster Movano Racing would dearly like to get both of their cars onto the podium, and the Porsche Basel car here been looking all race like they could maybe mix it up, maybe stick with the pace, spoil the party, and here is an opportunity for them to just do so.
Yeah, but we have to take account is the stint difference, 3 laps between the Basel by Srn Esports car and to the Thrustmaster Movano number 4. And still, Florian Kruger's still trying to put party mode into his car, but Philip Bauer's just having none of it. All that gap that he actually earned coming into that ridge is already dwindling down bit by bit. Every single chicane they go through right now is only less than a second, 9.9 seconds between the Sorgi sports car and the Movano. So before we come into Indianapolis, they might be about 5 seconds if anything just goes their way.
Yep, riding on board with Bauer right now. He'll know that he's got newer tyres than the car in front, that he's just lost the position to, and he's trying to chase back down. Right now they're coming towards Indianapolis and then Arnage, and then after that the Porsche curves. You'd expect that's the section of the track where new tyres would give you the most advantage. It's the most of the fast sweeping corners, not just the stop start, the traction zones. The old tyres probably don't matter as much for the traction in a 4-wheel drive car like these LMP1 hybrids. If you start spinning up the rear wheels while the front wheels are still pulling you along out of the corner, it's the grip through the high speed corners where I assume the tyres will have the biggest difference.
And now there's going to be a big problem to the Thrustmaster Movano car, as there is a Porsche right in front of them right at the entry of the Porsche curve. So they're going to be losing right about a second coming out of the Porsche curves.
The speed difference between the GT cars and the LMP1's pretty significant through there, but the corners just keep coming and they don't stop coming. So really, Philip Bauer, the sensible thing to do is just wait for the opportunity to get through. You can only be so bold through there before you're risking a massive shunt and your race coming to an end. So that has absolutely cost Philip Bauer, I'd say. I mean, you can just see it out the windshield here. 2 seconds, maybe more. Hopefully be able to close some of that back. Yeah, he's lost more than 3 seconds to Florian Kruger just this lap around, and almost all of it was there through the Porsche curves, having to wait for what I think was one of the torque freak GTEs. And speaking of GTEs, well, this battle we said we were closing up, Lorenzo, it's side by side now.
Oh. And let's take a look at it.
Yeah, we are on our screens right now. So Bueller Racing Team, number 85 car side by side with the number 77 SimRC.de Crimson, who I think are the faster car and to the inside of the Porsche curves made that position. So up into 4th place. Little flash of the headlights there. Jürgen Frank, he's either annoyed with someone or pleased with himself, and I could forgive him for being either of those things. So 4th place is SimRC.de Crimson. 5th there is now Bueller Racing Team. And all the while, it's not too far behind Red Face Racing Team, who have just come out of the pit lane. So when these two cars have to pit, SimRC and Bueller Racing Team, they'll be quite close to Red Face, but on track right now as Jürgen Frank uses all of the exit of the Ford chicane there.
Yeah, basically Jürgen just said, oh, my car can actually handle a little bit of a rally cross, so let's do it. What's the problem? I'm not going to lose a lot of time for that. And now the gap is around 0.9 seconds between the SimRC, the Crimson car, to the Biella Aeronix one. So Efkan Birke, he's going to have to work all over again so he can actually get a gap up. I think what benefited him is one of the LM HPD cars that made SimRC car lose a little bit of time, so that's why they got into a battle.
Yeah, precisely. It was already SimRC closing them up just a little bit, and now, look, Jürgen Frank has gotten pretty well clear. Thinking of his escapades through the Ford chicane now, I would love to see a Porsche 911 try and take on the Dakar Rally. Someone entered a Holden Ute in the Dakar Rally. It didn't fare too well, but boy did it look good doing it.
Oh man, if you ain't gonna perform, at least make sure you do look good. Have the blings. Come on, it's basic stuff.
Yep, either look fast or look good, hopefully do both. And there you see two of the SimRC.de cars on track together, their LMP1 entry, putting another lap on the GTE entry. I think the little wiggle from the P1 was hello, and the flash of the headlights from Jürgen Frank was how do you do? Although they're German, so it was probably, you know, Wie geht's or something.
Hello or something on this. I don't know. I'm not gonna go into German because my German right now is knowledge is basically 1%. So don't ask me German words. It's gonna be tough and embarrassing, or both.
Yeah. So, yeah, friendly greeting between the two, and presumably wishing good luck to Florian Kruger as he's in this battle still with the, sorry, not Florian Kruger, Jürgen Frank in the car behind Efkan Birke, not being dropped massively quickly. And when we saw the lap delta earlier, it was really only half a second or some that the advantage per lap that the SimRC car had. Nonetheless, they're on a pretty similar strategy, I do think. Yes. Ooh, wait, am I correct on that? Yeah, only a lap or so, or 2 laps separated on when they need to come into the pit lane for fuel. So this is a battle that can absolutely still continue if they switch up the drivers later on and someone not quite as speedy as Jürgen Frank goes in, and Bueller Racing Team Euronics in the 85 can put in someone a little bit quicker than Efkan, then this battle could continue. Close on track, close on strategy, and it's all of the little things from here for the remaining of the 7 hours of the race that will probably decide who wins between those two in their little battle and who could potentially grab a 3rd place.
Yeah, but if we were to look right now, the battle between those two is that the advantage all goes to SimRC Crimson car, because Biella is just getting the HPDs and P1s in the wrong places and eventually have to yield a few seconds. So patience, my young apprentice, and let traffic do its job, because it might help out for you in the following laps.
Yeah, the team event is a team event. You can't rely on just, you know, one driver to be massively quick and keep the car out of the walls. All of your drivers need to be relatively quick. All of them need to keep it out of the wall, and you're only really as strong as the weakest link of the 4, maybe 5 drivers that you put together for your driving lineup. That's where teams like Thrustmaster Movano Racing or Torque Freak in our LMP2 class are so successful here is that they don't have a weak driver in their roster. Everyone that they put into the car is quick, is prepared, and has presumably had some input into the setup. See here, for this number 85 Bela Racing Team Euronics, if I'm seeing that correctly, we've only had 2 drivers in the driver's seat of this car for the, what are we now, 15 or more hours into the race.
No, we have more actually. We had
only 2 in the session or in the paddock?
No, we have more. We have more driving than 85. Started with Gary Tenson, then passed it to Lucas Yetstad. After that, Rito Hartman actually took over. Back to Gary Tenson. And then I think during the night shift, both African Birke and Lubomir Schwitz actually took over. Right now, African might be on his final stand right now. Should be passing to another driver when he finishes his stint.
There we go. So my apologies for misreading the graphic then. I did know that some of the drivers, like Lucas Yestat, is some of the drivers they had. I just couldn't remember who'd been in the 85 and who'd been in the sister 84 cars. Currently, Julian Grunistel in the Bela Racing Team Euronics number 84 car, which is just a couple spots behind in 8th place. Looking up and down my timing screen, and unfortunately, after that little battle that we saw between this Bela Racing Team car and the SimRC GTE, we've not got so many battles on track. It's all playing out more slowly, simmering on the back burner with strategy, with other things going on.
And the only thing I've seen on track is actually Eva Vervatic jump up 1 place. Now 4th place into the standings because Heiskeveld is actually in the pits with Ronnie Fantini doing his pit service.
Yeah, and it looks like quite a long stop actually for the Team Heusingfeld car over Ronnie Fantini. I'm seeing on my timing screen, which isn't always 100% reliable, that they were maybe stopped for 1 minute 18 seconds, which would suggest tyres, fuel, and also a little bit of repairs for the Team Heusingfeld car, because tyres and fuel can take 56 seconds. Well, goodness, maybe they got a speeding in the pit lane penalty. I haven't gone back and looked. But regardless, just a little bit of extra time in the pit lane than maybe they would have hoped for has put them back into 5th place for the moment. Does elevate Ava Vivatic into 4th place. What we'll do right now is we'll take a lap or 2 on board with the Team Heusingfeld LMP2 Ronnie Fantini behind the wheel. From our segment here, this is our first RaceSpot TV fan immersion. Some laps on board there with Ronnie Fantini of Team Hoisingfeld. Bit of a moment for him into one of the Mulsanne chicanes, but also I just saw Ava Vivatic, the number 39 car, coming into the pit lane with Fabrice Cornelis. They're only 4 laps into a stint, and now coming into pit lane, is there some damage on that car, Lorenzo?
Ooh, sounds like there is some heavy damage on the back wing of that car. I want to see what kind of happened to Fabrice Cornelis to make you to understand why he has such a big damage on the rear wing of his car.
Yeah, missing the whole rear wing. As I said, just 4 laps into the stint. Hopefully, we'll try and get a replay of what happened to that number 39 in the Ava Vivatic car. And I said it earlier, 5th place is enough for Ava Vivatic to take the championship. So is 6th, but 7th will give the championship in LMP2 to Talk Freak Racing. Lorenzo, where has that occurred?
From the looks of it, actually started right before the start-finish line, where he actually managed to clip one of the 4 chicanes. Not 4 chicanes. No, I got betrayed. But they got some really. I could see they spinning at Tata Rouge, and something might happen at Tata Rouge. They might have got something and basically upset the entire car. And now they're repairing everything. And you know what happened that? What happens to the championship standings about that, right?
Yeah, I did just very, very quickly mention it. I think he actually carried that damage for more than a lap from part of the Porsche curve. So here it is right there. Through the Porsche curves to the left, the car snaps a little bit. He corrects to the right and the oversteer is pretty significant. Puts the rear of the car into the wall. Maybe hasn't noticed that he's lost the rear wing immediately because he didn't come into the pits this time. Did another lap around. It's well, cost them quite dearly. The number 39 car of Ava Vivatic. Getting another angle of what's happened. Into the left, the rear slides out to the right. The change in direction does not help the slide at the rear of the car. Not the hardest of hits, but it did, as you see, go and knock that rear wing off.
Oh, he's already offset by the second half of the Porsche curves. And what Fabrice just tried to do is counter steer that car. But one of the most complicated things on the HPD, trust me, I do know what I'm talking about, is counter steer that car and make sure it is still on the track, especially in curves that need some downforce like that one. And he actually hit the barrier, and unfortunately for Fabrice, didn't take notice that the rear wing was off. I think he thought it was just slightly damaged and kept going until I think he spun the Tata Rouge and then realized he had no wings.
Yeah, so he's then gone and brought it back down onto pit lane. It's been 1:26 stationary in the box. The team very, very rapidly fitting at least, I guess, a new rear clip or a new rear wing to that car. We'll see if it's carrying any lingering damage, but right now it looks just about brand new again at the rear. That's so only gone and cost Ava Vivatic 1 spot. They're still, I think, about half a lap clear of Inertia Sim Racing Corsac, who have got Ilka Katlakowski in the car right now. So probably a heart-stopping moment for Ava Vivatic, knowing that 4th or 5th is enough for the championship, but 6th or 7th might not be. So they come back out on the track, now in 5th position, but their hopes of getting past Team Hoisingfeld again are rather slim because they've gone and lost a minute and more to that.
Yeah, and what I want to see now is what Fabrice's strategy is now from now on, if he's actually going to be just as aggressive as Fabrice knows he is, or if he's gonna play more safe and try to avoid doing mistakes like that. Because trust me, if you were faster coming into that Porsche curve and hit the barrier just like you did in a more speed, the back end of the car, the engine is in the back. That is a rear engine car. That car engine would have been gone, and you need long repairs for that. And after the repairs, you're still not gonna have a good performance out of it.
Yeah, he did manage to get on the brake pedal as it was heading towards the wall, slow it down a little bit. It wasn't the heaviest or fastest of hits, this section of the track here where it happened, but yeah, the walls through the Porsche curves at least in iRacing scan, pretty close to the track, so when you have a mistake like that, you don't have a whole lot of room to save it. Through the Mulsanne chicanes, through Tetra Rouge, maybe through Dunlop, there's other places around the circuit where you get a lot more runoff area than through the Porsche curves. So watching him right now, riding some of the curbs through Ford chicanes there. Car looking good, the car looking quick, but obviously quite a bit of time lost to that incident. So you're at what was third place in LMP1 category, the number 18 Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports car. They've just come into pit lane. She's given third position back to the number 4 Thrustmaster Movano racing car.
And now Martin Nuremberg has taken over the car, so a little bit of an additional time loss to their car, and I can get from Neo, actually, this is really important. Battle for the GTE class could be coming up really soon, as the MSI car, the MSI Esports number 75, is actually only 6 seconds behind the Logitech Altus Esports Neo car. Of course, there is a distinct difference between one car to another, but still, sign of a yellow alert to the Logitech of sorts, Neo. Sorry, David.
Yeah, the most recent lap for the number 83 Logitech Altus Esports car, clearly a bit scruffy. You see that's 3 minutes 53, and that's where the bulk of the time that Marc Perez has made up. Obviously, you see 2 laps before that, he's flying along, closing that gap down little by little. But whatever on earth the problem was for Simon Feigl, it's cost them a little bit. Oh no, because that would have been their in-lap. Apologies, they're on an out-lap right now, is the number 83 car. So that slow lap you see would have been their in-lap, including taking the pit entry. So Marc Perez is now just 3/4 of a pit stop behind, because they're 13 laps into their stint. Probably 2 more laps right now for Marc Perez before the MSI Esports car needs to pit. So it looks pretty close, and of course Marc Perez doing all the right things to close down the gap. It's only 5 seconds on track right now, but that's because Altus Esports just out of the pit lane. MSI Esports need to pit in 2 laps time. That gap is certainly slowly coming down, Lorenzo.
Slowly coming down now, 4.6 seconds to the Logitech car. So basically Marc Perez is on a tear again right now in his what could be 5th stint on the car. So I'm gonna throw a question to you, David, and actually I'm gonna throw a question to the audience. Let's just say hypothetically he manages to actually go within a second gap, a half a second gap to the car ahead of it, to the Logitech, on your final lap of your stint, and you know you need to pit stop. Would you risk going for the lead, or you know you've closed down the gap so closely, you build up the gap, you managed to build up a good stint, close down that gap so close to one another that you really don't want to risk and just leave for the final hours?
I think if you're MSI Esports and you catch Altus Esports on the lap before you pit, you wouldn't pass them. If you caught them 2 laps before you came into the pits, absolutely, by just staying behind, you would be costing yourself time that you could have in the next stint to close them down even further. And we see now, I love these fantastic long shots down the Mulsanne straight. You get to see all of the different cars, the sort of gold and blue Porsche 911 in the foreground, Altus Esports, and then the deeper blue, yellow Michelin Man Bibendum, that's his proper name, MSI Esports car, just 4 seconds behind. You see him in the same shot, but separated by 1 pit stop. With 6 hours 45 minutes to go though, that's absolutely a gap that continually putting in quick laps could close down for MSI Esports. The battle for the lead in GTE getting closer.
And meanwhile, we have the RCDE number 8077 car doing the pits. Christian Koch taking command over the car. They were 5th in class, might be thrown down to Red Face Racing. By the time they actually get out of the pits, they are really close.
Up on the jacks for SimRC, taking tyres as well. Obviously, a driver change, as sensible a time as any to take a new set of tyres. Probably next lap or the lap after, we'll expect BLO Racing Team to come in. And Red Face Racing Team are about halfway through their stint right now. So that battle, they were all close on track earlier. Now they're going to have some pit stops, and hopefully we'll see another great battle again. Down on the jack, spins up the tyres, and Christian Koch is going out there. Number 77, SimRC.de, Crimson, their GTE entry for the German-based team.
Yeah, in the last position, Red Face Racing. I'm butchering names right now. So, right now, the Benjamin Gonzalez has that advantage. Seems like he might be going to try to save a few liters of fuel on the Mulsanne straight. Let's see how the SimRC Crimson car will respond to that.
Yeah, so SimRC have come out behind Red Face, as you said, and then expecting Biela in soon. Red Face Racing, they've had some reasonable pace right now, so this is the kind of point where they're not in the battle on track, because the pit stop cycles have separated them. But if they put in good laps around here, then by the time they come out of their next pit stop, that'll sort of determine how close they are to Biela Racing, how close they are to SimRC.de. You see that the fastest lap for that car, 3 minutes 46.1. The last lap, 3 minutes 47.9. Track temperatures continue to rise as we get deeper into the morning here in France. As it is, track temps, well, my official reading now up to 23 degrees Celsius, but we have heard that a circuit as large as this, different amounts of tree covering around the different places, some bits of the track might be hotter than 23 degrees, but whatever the number actually is, it's for certain that all around the circuit track temperatures rising just a little bit. And you can see places around the circuit where there's marbles around, the rubber has been laid down, and in some places gravel or grass or dirt's also been dragged onto the circuit. No doubt nowhere near as quick as it was maybe just a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, and we have to consider that the race is still early in the morning. Don't forget, we got this race, we managed our broadcast during the sunrise, basically at sunrise. So right now it's 9:25 a.m. race time, so I believe the track max temperature will be around 2 at the final hour, probably at the final hour or 2, or the second to final hour. So where it might be hitting the 30 something degrees, or the cars might be getting a little bit slippery. They're not going to get fast laps compared to the night ones, but for turns that demand the tires like Porsche curves and Indianapolis, that might be a little bit of a challenge. Let's see if it is going to be a really considerable difference. But for now, the driver is still within a very comfortable area, a very great comfortable area in terms of tire temps and ambience.
Yeah, of course, just like the ACO's real 24 Hours of Le Mans, we started around 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and we go through to 3 p.m. in the afternoon the next day. So certainly expecting the hottest of the running to be still ahead of us in this race. Red Face Racing, they stay out on circuit, and some of the other cars around them that we expect to see in the pit lane, like BLO Racing Team Euronics, are stationary in the lane right now. Their pit service just about nearly done. Red Face Racing, I believe, will come through and take that position away from the number 85 car. Yep.
Now it remains to be seen if SimRC Crimson is actually going to capture. It's going to be really close. They might be coming out of the pits right now, Biela, but SimRC with a little bit of ease and without any problems just captures fourth position from Biela Aeronautics 1.
Yep, indeed. So Biela losing 2 positions there through their pit stop. Bit of a long one, 1 minute 10 seconds stationary. That is fuel tires and maybe getting some damage fixed. Here is your battle for the lead. MSI Esports still clawing away at it, now within 1 second, but they are going to have to come into the lane this time, are MSI Esports. They've gotten so close but that fuel tank is running on empty. Look for the 911 RSR, the Porsche GT car in the background there,
Here
to
it comes.
peel into the pit entry here. And indeed, they do just that. So Simon Feigl gets a tiny bit of reprieve, but he'll know that MSI Esports have got the car pace if they need to use it later on, and they're going to continue to close down that gap.
Yeah, now the question remains, is actually Mark Perez is going to stay within that car? I believe he won't. He might switch spots to somebody else. And if they're actually going to take tires, so let's see in the next few seconds.
Yeah, I'm struggling to remember what service they did or didn't take at the last stop. I think last stop was no tyres. So we'll see if this set, if my memory is correct, go to a triple, or if Mark Perez is going to decide the temperatures are hotting up and speed is to be had from a new set of tyres. But whatever the state of their tyres, they were certainly quicker than Logitech G Altus's eSports car. No tyres for MSI Esports, just fuel. Mark Perez once again stays in the car. MSI Esports are going to come out just a minute or so behind the 83 car that they are battling. So when it comes pit stop time next time for Logitech G Altus Esports, it's possible that MSI with this no tyres strategy right here might manage to jump them just a little bit.
Yeah, I really want to see by the end of their outlap to see what is the gap between the lead between the Logitech's G Altus car to MSI, because right now on my relative it says 12 seconds, but it's a complete lie. It's more lie than I'm not going to go into this kind of conversation, but I really want to see if it's actually the gap is around a minute or a minute and 10, because if it is a minute, he manages to shred 10 seconds into his 10, and that might put some really good alert into the Logitech car, because coming down into the final 4 hours might be maybe 3 hours, things might get heated between those cars.
Yep, and I'm having a look at the drivers for Altus Esports. Simon Feigl, team manager of Altus, in the car right now. Previously in was Simone Maria Marceno. I've also got Yannick Lapchin. So those are the three drivers that I see for them for this race. And Simon, all credit to you, mate, but I would say that if you needed blistering pace to combat MSI Esports later in the race, you'd put Yannick Lapchin or Simone back in the car later on. They've still got some weapons at their disposal, but boy, have MSI Esports been very, very quick.
Yeah, I think right now Simon, we have to give respect to Simon totally. We know how Simon is fast around most of the tracks. We've seen, I think, what race was it? I think it was Suzuka race where he was flying around the course. It was basically dominating the pace on the Suzuka race. But for this one, he's not, compared to his teammates, he's just not been up to speed. He's been okay, but he's not been consistent like Simone Maria Marceno and Yannick Lapchin.
Yeah, precisely. So the MSI Esports car comes out in third behind Williams Gym Esports Black, but they're going to have to come into the pits this time as well. Logitech G stay out, but that's the status of your top three in GT category, where it's probably our closest field right now. We've already touched on what lead LMP2 class is led by Torque Freak Racing, and in LMP1 there seems like no one can put a stop to the number 3 car of Thrustmaster Movano. It's GT category once again that is putting on the excitement, and just as I say that, we see that it's a real clump of LMP1 cars right here coming through the Dunlop chicane with Forest S's and down towards Tetra Rouge, but it's the number 3 car that leads that category. Here's 2 race clutch cars. They find themselves together. Maybe they'll give each other a little wave like we saw with the SimRC DE cars. Who knows?
Already done. So here, let's just see if Ron is actually going to have the same deal. Actually, quite easily, he just goes by, but right now, only Tommaso what is doing is just keeping his car on the track. We know how dominant the number 3 it has been the entire race, basically leading by near the 2/3 of a lap to the number 4 car and the number 18, which is the Srn Esports. The Basel by Srn Esports number 18 LMP1 car. So right now, we're all just setting the cars on track. I think they're driving with no pressure. Tommaso Carla knows this, so just basically on automatic driver's seat, try to avoid any injuries and make sure the car just comes out undamaged.
So here's one of those battles we were talking about in GTE. Yellow Racing Team Euronics have recently had their pit stop. I said it was a little bit of a long one, and now obviously they've taken tyres because they've closed up some of the gap to SimRC.de and Christian Koch to battle for 5th place. I'm going to check once again. Yeah, so just on their first flying lap of their new set of tyres is Lubomir Shevits. So hopefully putting themselves back into the top 5. I'm sure that's their strategy, in exactly the right spot to be able to do it. New tyres, but Christian Koch is going to defend a little bit into the entry of the Porsche curves. No move this time, but he's feisty. It's elbows out.
All feisty elbows out. I think any battles, if they can go, if they're going side to side, it might not be over here, as there's a number 4 just monster car just overtaking the Euronics by the end of the Porsche curve. There is a battle between that number 4 and that number 18. So double battles.
Yep. So on our screens right now, 2 different battles, 4 Porsches, but
and the Basel just overtakes the number 4 by the start finish line. So Porsche Basel by Srn Esports number 18 back in the 3rd place into the overall standings.
and then we look just a teeny bit further behind to that GTE battle through the last couple corners of the track. Christian Koch pulling out a teeny bit more gap, teeny bit more safety margin over the Biela Racing Team Euronics car. The rest of the lap and in the straight line, presumably, is where Biela Racing Team have an advantage. The rear wing for the SimRC.de car, you can see it got a little bit of a tweak to the right hand side. That hasn't been slowing SimRC.de down too badly, but it's not optimal, it's not factory new, and if it was costing them 1 or 2 kilometers an hour in a straight line, that wouldn't surprise me. So the onboard view, we get a great look at Lubomir Shevits following in the slipstream, closing up, and I love the shift lights on the Porsche. You see them go all the way nearly to the rev limiter, closing in a lot. The first part of the Mulsanne chicane does so. It's got now the next bit, close up a teeny bit further. It's a possibility of an overtake here, Lorenzo.
Yeah, another overtaking opportunity. He's working the draft. I just know where he's going to put that car inside. So he's going to be on the battery side coming out. Don't even need to come into the curve. It basically just overtakes before into the second chicane. Now the question is, can you hold it coming down into the final curve headed to Indianapolis? Yeah,
if Christian Koch is quick through the corners and all the other places, but losing time in a straight line, while having the slipstream of the car in front will negate some of the potential weaknesses of his car, remains to be seen. But of course, new tyres for Biela Racing Team, that's always an advantage now as the track temp continues to rise, now up to 23.3 degrees Celsius as I see it. They're nearly going to go 4 wide. The Wyvern Racing car is coming through to put a lap on some of these cars. The LMP2 cars coming through as well. So suddenly a little cluster of activity here on the way from Mulsanne Corner down towards Indianapolis. It all sorts itself out, and that's what the long straights do, is it gives the passing class cars a little bit more time to not have to be too aggressive. And one of the reasons we've seen pretty strong resilience from all the teams out here, lack of a better word, not the one I was looking for. I mean to say that we've still got 45 of 55 or so starters out there on track. I'm missing a word here. It's in my mind, and it's not coming. Oh, we still got most of the cars running that started, so it's No, Lorenzo, go.
Alright, so let's get back into that SimRC car battle. As they're going to the Porsche cars, Christian Coach not giving any edge to Lubermish Viets. As he just got overtaken. Oh, there's another race clutch car coming in. Beep, beep. Coming up right at the end of the Porsche curves and headed into Porsche chicane. The advantage between each car is around 0.6 of a second. Dave just say his brain just broke, but every commentator's brain just breaks sometimes. My brain just break, yeah, constantly. So let's just go through with this. So for now, they're actually, well, that's the only real close battle we have here on the circuit, because all other battles are basically battles within gaps and strategies. And let's just keep on with them for a little bit. So just know, David, how do you fix your brain?
No. There's a sentence I want to say, and there's a word that starts with R that I want to use, and I start the sentence and I know where it's going, and I get to that word, and there's just like a file corrupted in my brain. You know, you're just reading down a Word document, and suddenly it's corrupted. That's what just happened to me. But so we said this is the closest battle happening right now between these GTE class cars, and it is a little bit like what I thought might happen. Is now with the advantage of the slipstream following the other car, Christian Koch is not being shaken at all. He's still just following along right there, but not looking like he's going to close that back up, try and pass it again. Might just ride along until it's time for his next pit stop.
Yeah, but if we were to look into stint difference, basically it is a really equal stint difference, and for the SimRC car might work in their favor a little bit, because it might save an extra fuel, because they're fuel down to the Euronics car ahead of them. So right now I think Christian Coach's mindset just needs to be work the draft, save a little bit of fuel that you can save, and coming into the final lap, maybe you can try to see who comes out on top whenever you're pit stopping. And did you find the word? I think there's a word in the chat that might be the word you're looking for.
No, but one thing I do want to mention is now we're watching this battle. It's 5th and 6th. Through the last round of pit stops, Redface Racing have gone and solidly jumped these guys. Redface Racing were in 6th earlier, and now they're in 4th. And what's the gap they've got back to 5th place? It's rather significant. So Benjamin Gonzalez, he's had his head down, and like I said, when the other drivers came in to do their pit stops, when he had some clean air, just continued to lap quicker than them. And we know Dealer Racing Team, they're on a brand new set of tyres. Their last lap was a 3-minute 48.2 on older tyres, because they took just fuel at their most recent stop. Benjamin Gonzalez has still done a 3-minute 47.9, so he's grabbed the positions through the pit stops by not taking tyres at the most recent stop. So now he's ahead on track, but still continuing to pull that gap away on the old tyres. Benjamin Gonzalez foot down and trying to seal up that 4th place for Redface Racing right now.
There's a really interesting conversation about tire drop-off in Le Mans, more so than other tracks, you know, David, because in Le Mans, since you are basically 80% of the time in straights and 20% in curves, the tire drop-off in terms of, having grip coming to these turns, like Indianapolis, Ford chicanes, the Dunlop chicanes, it has to go whenever you're coming into your final third, maybe fourth stint. If you do actually do that kind of thing, you can see that in real life. Drivers do quad stints and then triple singing the tires, because the drop off isn't that big, you know. If it has any drop offs, only if it is because you had damage. That's all.
Yeah, that's true, especially through the night of the race when the coolest of the temperatures are around. See that right now, even though I'm praising the pace of Benjamin Gonzalez, and he's pulling away from the cars behind, closing up some of the cars in front. In fact, he's one of the quickest GTE class cars out there right now. Still more than 2 seconds shy of the best lap of that car. And it's been an hour since we last did one, so I think we'll do another top 8 recap. Maybe aim for a fan immersion on the hour, top 8 recap on the every half hour. Sounds good to me. So here is your LMP1 class standing. Still leading is Thrustmaster Movano Racing in the number 3 car. Not quite as much as before, but it's still nearly a minute that they have over the number 7 car of SimRC.de. Third place, well, we saw that position change on screen. Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports and the number 18 car, now ahead of Thrustmaster Movano Racing's number 4 car. And you can see there that it's just 8 seconds or so that separates those two. The Porsche Basel car is extending that gap though. 5th place is Wyvern Racing, the number 25 car. 6th place, Team Chimera, the number 24 car. 7th is VRT E-Racing right now. And 8th is Simitok Esports in LMP1 class. And Lorenzo, I think I'll let you do LMP2.
Alright, let's do LMP2. We just grabbed the routers so far. Torque Freak has been in that very, very dominant pace, leading the LMP2 class. First place, NT Racing, second place. Third place just goes to IRDK Entrance. Fourth is Ronnie Fantini with the Team Hoiskapel car, followed by the Ava Vervatic in 5th place. 6th goes to T-Mad. 7th place will go to Racing Center Vibe Esports, and rounding out your top 8 for the LMP2 class is Nurture Racing Course.
Now over to the GTE class, which we spent most of the time recently talking about. Of course, here is your leader on your screen, the Porsche 911 RSR of Logitech G Altus Esports. They've got 60 seconds over MSI Esports right now. They're going to have to pit sooner than that car behind. 3rd place is the Williams Gym Esports, number 96. 4th is Redface Racing, who, through some clever pit strategy and some great driving, managed to jump ahead of 5th place Bueller Racing Team Euronics and 6th place SimRC.de. Those two cars close together. We were just watching them and saw that position swap. 7th is Srn Motorsports in the number 74 car, and then 8th place, the sister Bueller Racing Team Euronics car, the number 84 machine. And that is, as they stand right now, your top 8 in all 3 categories here of the Neo Endurance Series, the Race Spot 24 Hours of Le Mans.
But there's a slight but, which I just saw, which our new friend Randy Chen just mentioned, is that if you guys look at the number 97 Wheeling JAM Esports Yellow, they had a disc, they were accidentally removed by the server, and they will be credited 1 minute and 49 seconds post race. So even though they are 10th place right now, if they can actually claw up a few seconds compared to the guys ahead of them, they are within the same lap to the Biela Euronics 8th place, Euronics 2 8th place car. They could become your final 8th place in the top 8 in the GTE class.
Yeah, exactly. So incorrectly dealt a penalty is effectively what has occurred for that number 97 car, and to put it right, they're getting like a reverse post-race penalty. Instead of having time added after the race, they'll have 1 minute 49 seconds removed. Like we just saw, the gap to the car ahead is very close to that, so they're in a battle like that. And here is an actual battle on Class because Christian Koch has decided he's done enough time following the Bueller car around. He's now going to move himself up into 5th position as they come towards the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. I don't think it will be particularly difficult for the car behind Lubomir Skivitz to close that back up again, but a swap for position for your last spot in the top 5.
Yeah, and as you see them overtaking right now, before the first chicane is just, I think there's going to be a back and forth between them. They're probably going to be marking one back and forth as Christian coach just try to push within the second chicane, just going to make the overtake. Now Aeronix, the number 1 car, a little bit more just trying to pull away the gap. But the problem for pulling away the gap, for you to be in a comfortable gap without any draft, has to be around the second, and that's just not happening. The gap is around 0.5 seconds, half a second between Aeronix 1 and the CRC Crimson car. So something needs to happen. They need to get into the Porsche cars and do it perfectly, or a slight error might have to happen between them to make sure someone is within a comfortable position.
Yeah, so the number 77 grabbing 5th place for all of about 30 seconds before slotting back into 6th. Now, not quite as close as they even were before. The car behind them, though, 7th place Srn Motorsports Orange, I think has just come into the pit lane. Here's your number 74 car, the Srn Motorsports Ferrari, entering its pit box. Stephen McGarvey behind the wheel right now. We'll see what service and what changes they do at this stop. Fuel going in, not looking like a driver change right now. Of course, 35 seconds thereabouts to fill the fuel tank in a GTE, and then once the fuel filling is done, it's the option of the team to take tyres or not. A new set of tyres costs you 25 seconds in the pit lane, but of course provides you a little bit more grip out on track. So in a second, we'll see, does that Ferrari go up on the jacks, Lorenzo?
Yeah, let's see if it actually goes up in the jacks. They are right now headed into the pit service. 60 kilometers per hour, slowly getting into their lane, working the outside. And I do believe they're actually going to change tires. If they do, that would be a smart strategy. Maybe triple stint their tires right now, and then coming to the final hours, double stint or maybe triple stint.
I think confusion right there might have been between, I was looking at the Srn Motorsports car, but the SimRC.de Emerald car of LMP1 that is in the top 3 was in 2nd place, is also in the pit lane. So there's no tyres for the Srn Motorsports Ferrari that was 7th place in GTE. But your 2nd place in LMP1, they've just completed their pit service. Philip Weber still behind the wheel of the number 7. That was also fuel and no tyres. Here they are, come out in 2nd place still, and they'll be hoping to maybe claw some more of the gap out of the leading car, the number 3 Thrustmaster Movano Racing, with Tommaso Carla behind the wheel of that, and a minute 44 seconds clear of SimRC.de. We're going to need either dramas for the number 3 car or a massive turn of pace in the SimRC prototype to claw that gap back down.
Yeah, and I don't see it happening, to be quite honest, David. I think the number 3 has been so dominant, so clean into this race that I find it hard to see something happening to their car. But then, if it happens, commentators cursing, and then the entire Thrustmaster Movano team is going to come down and probably put us on a curb.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to cross them. So I'm looking down the order of our GTE cars, and you are right, the Red Face Racing car was just in the pit lane. They're on their outlap right now, and they did take tyres. Srn Motorsports didn't. So they were in 4th, and they'd done very well off their previous pit stops. Now it's the cars ahead of the Yellow Racing Team and SimRC.de Crimson. They're going to have to pit and presumably elevate Red Face Racing back up into 4th. Benjamin Gonzalez has new tyres to play with now, and he's going to hopefully put down some quick laps. Otherwise, we'll be once again under pressure from those other teams. The Yellow Racing Team Euronics, the number 85, not their number 84, and SimRC.de Crimson GTE, the 77.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the number 35 Hoskinveld car is pitting, and they're just did their driver swap. Christian Kiewit is actually going to take over from Ronnie Fontini. The gap to Eve is quite comfortable of sorts, within basically a minute from the Eva Vervatic car driven by Fabrice Cornelis, because Cornelis is just doing Indianapolis, so around a minute and 20 seconds between one car to another. And what is a really good stint, really comfortable, safe stint by Ronnie Fantini. Not the fastest, but also probably one of the cleanest stints for a LMP2 car.
And of course, they benefited from that crash, those repairs for Ava Vivatic that they needed. So comfortably back out into 4th place for Team Hoisingfeld. Just a 31-second stop for them. 4th place in your middle category, the LMP2s. Coming through Tetra Rouge now. You've got to be careful not to go too far out into the runoff there, or you will attract yourself an automatic penalty, a slow down penalty. Those are very, very painful around here, so you try and keep your car within the track limits. Otherwise, you'll be having less fun. Coming down the Mulsanne Straight here, one of the longest, most famous straights in motorsport, now broken up by 2 chicanes, but each of the segments are still very long, very high speed, and down from 6th gear into 2nd goes Christian Hewitt on his outlap. Car looking like a little bit of a handful, but looking like he can make good speed through the corners by flicking it in and then using the steering to manage the slip angle and manage the direction of the car.
Yeah, so basically how the HPD works, I say this because it's my specialty car, since it has no mechanical grip, you basically have to point the car and use the acceleration, a little bit of acceleration, good throttle management for you to grab a really good entry, and also the gearing is quite important, because if you have 1 gear extra, let's just say you're coming into 3rd gear, the car just heavily oversteers and doesn't have that mechanical grip for you to correct and do not lose a lot of time. So it has to have a little bit of precision input. So people don't like the HPD because it is an outdated car, but I think in terms of learning how to drive, it is the best experience if you are looking to drive an LMP1 car and then work your racecraft, because it is a challenging car for you to master of sorts.
Yep, number 18 car, Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports on the lane right now. Mike Nürnberg stays behind the wheel. That looks like just fuel to me. And so they are involved in a battle for 3rd place with Thrustmaster, Movano Racing and Philip Bauer. They were in 3rd place when they came into the pits, and that car that's now ahead of them probably going to have to pit in 4 or 5 laps time. So a critical phase of the race here for Mike Nürnberg if they want to put that car on the podium, the last race of the season. Looking across at the standings, this is a car that I believe is 2nd in the championship, and I think a 3rd place would pretty well cement that for them. It'd be a good result for that team.
Yes, it will cement them a good result, but one thing we need to see by the end of this race is how the standings will be shuffled, because if we are to look, Sim Emerald is in 2nd, the gap between them is at only 11 points, so I don't know what is the difference between 2nd place and then a 3rd or maybe 4th place between them. And I don't know if that, by the end of the race, Sim RC Emerald could actually jump up 2 slots and become the runner-up of this championship. So mathematics are involved over here as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's once you go down from Thrustmaster Movano Racing, who've been pretty well dominant this season for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the LMP1 standings. It's all pretty close, and Race Clutch in 3rd right now, but in the standings, I should say, but they're only just clear of SimRC.de, who are ahead of them on track here, so lots of places, not just for the championship, but further down the order could change.
They could change really big, really big. If you are to look right now, 2nd place to grab 16 points, that's 32 total. If they grab 14, that will be 28 points. That is a difference of 4. 32 by 28, that is 28, that is
so
4
this
points.
Is on your screen right now what we're talking about. This is the points as they came into this round, you see Sebring, Kota, Interlagos, Suzuka, number 3 car of Thrustmaster Movano Racing, swept the win at all of them. Only got second at Spa. You've got to feel sorry for them for that. But this is how close it is. You look down at, for example, Race Clutch and SimRC.de. SimRC going to jump Race Clutch with this, and Porsche Basel by Sorg Rennsport Esports. They're also in the position right now to hold on to second. But I think, as it is right now with the number 4 car, they have a chance, that Thrustmaster Movano Racing, sort of their second entry, of potentially leaping Race Clutch. So anything between, second through to 5th, that's all pretty close. So not just the championship to think about, which at this point is the number 3 Thrustmaster Movano Racing cars to lose, but then second, third, fourth, all of those things, well, they matter whether you finish 4th or 2nd in the standings. It's important to a lot of these teams. So it's one thing that could also still change in the remainder of this race.
Yeah, and right now, if the thing stays like it is right now, believe it or not, Basel will still be in second by a gap of only 1 point. Only just 1 point, because they would be losing a total of 10 points, 32, whereas the other one's 20. Actually, I was wrong. It's going to be really close. It's going to be around 3 points between the Basel and the SimRC car. So right now, these things matter for the rest of the championship, whereas the Movano 3 car is just grabbing the championship points by now, by a lone difference.
Yeah, precisely. SimRC.de, the car on the screen right now, has a chance of moving up the standings to second place if the number 18 Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports car comes across some problems, or if even they could, if even the SimRC.de car could grab the win in what would probably be unlikely circumstances, but if they did, that might be enough to launch them up into second place in the standings. So they've got plenty to race for, plenty of reasons to stay on the lead lap and follow their strategy to the end of the race to put in as many laps as they possibly can.
Yeah, try to put as many laps as you can, and make sure nothing happens if you have any issues. If you have any issues, make sure it isn't issues that damage you on the long run, because for now, Basel has a second gap, not a second, correction, a lap gap to Wyvern, and Wyvern, even though he's not officially into this runner-up top 5 spot, even though he's in the standings, he can be fighting in the standings for that one, but that would actually hurt a lot the runner-up standings if something happens to Basel.
It's true. Looking right now, Logitech G Altus Esports, MSI Esports, the battle that's playing out for the lead of the GTE category. Marc Perez is still slowly closing that gap down. It was a minute not so long ago. It's now about 55 seconds. Doing all the right things at MSI Esports to be in a position to be able to race for the lead, not just for the lead, but for what would be the championship, the GT category of Season 5 of the Neo Endurance Series. So those are your two title hopefuls, the number 83 car of Logitech G Altus Esports, the number 75 of MSI Esports. Those two are so close in the standings that basically, if they're in the top 5, whoever finishes ahead of the other will become the champion. As it stands right now, Altus Esports are doing enough that they would become the champions. But if MSI Esports close up, if MSI Esports close up that 55 seconds and overtake them, it swings the other way and MSI Esports will be your champions. So that's the game that's being played for first and second. The game that's being played for fourth and fifth right here, Lorenzo. SimRC.de haven't really been able to get past and stay ahead, but they are not giving up on trying to grab this position from Bueller Racing Team Euronics.
Yeah, I think so far right now, if they're not overtaking, if Christian's not overtaking, even though he's trying his best, It's just Lubermer's feats more merit of staying in good lines, and whenever Christian comes, he's actually not being able. Oh boy, there comes a story game. Esports cars flying fast by them. So far, their advantage is that they're saving fuel, so they could be in a contention of maybe 4 or 15 stint lap, whereas the Ronix will be in 14, so they could be fighting for position at the very final lap of their stints.
Absolutely possibility. This is your closest battle on screen. So we watch it, and they swapped positions earlier in this stint again. And this really looks like the Bila Racing team is going a little bit defensive. They're going to go side by side. This is the run from Mulsanne down to Indianapolis. Sorry, towards Mulsanne. And then now the run Mulsanne down to Indianapolis. The straight line sections, the slipstream, it's really where the gap closes up. And you can tell from the cockpit on board here with Christian Koch that there's a few more dents to the Sim RC car than there is to the Bila Racing car. Doesn't stop him closing a little bit in a straight line, but it's so far prevented him from getting ahead and staying ahead in this battle.
Yeah, just staying ahead. Oh, number four. Oh, there's just number 4 crashed.
Issues for the number 4 car, the Thrustmaster Movano race?
Yeah,
Indeed, there is. So Philip Bauer behind the wheel. He's involved in the battle with the Porsche Basel by Sorg esports car. Not wheel to wheel, but they were trading third place through pit stops. We've got a replay here of what happened. So he's approaching the Porsche curves, 2 GTEs in front. That's a Williams Gym and Trick Sim Sports. Sorry, this is the exit of the Porsche curves, and oh, that's contact with Trick Sim Sports, and that has sent, my goodness, what a huge crash there, right into the wall, high speed. And something has also happened to the Trick Sim Sports car. I think it's Scott Solowski behind the wheel of that, and we'll get confirmation. Yes. Yeah, but have both of them made contact with the wall there as well? They have. That's a huge incident. We're going to see a few angles of that because it absolutely deserves it. He's on board with the LMP1 car, trying to stay to the left, taps the Trick car that maybe didn't know the LMP1 car was there. He's sort of hiding behind the Williams Gym car until just a few seconds before he pulled out. Stewards will no doubt have a look at that one, but regardless, it's a huge accident for the car that was running in third place in LMP1.
Yes, and that could, I don't know how.
Anthony Winkleman behind the wheel of the Trick Sim Sports car. My apologies. Back to you, Lorenzo.
Oh, all right. But that could actually be terrible for the Trustmaster car. Let's see how the standings will be. That one thing that is actually assures that no matter what, if all stages safe, Basel Esports actually is going to finish third. We just need to do the calculations again. But so far, they're going to be retaining that top 2 spot, the runner-up position. They're basically securing bar any mistakes happening. But oh, what a shame. That is. I don't know what could I blame that for. I think I could blame that for lack of attention and tiredness. That maybe.
Yeah. Well, the only real excuse I can give for the GTE coming across like that is that in the rear vision, the LMP1 car would have been hidden by the GTE that was immediately behind him until right at the exit of the Porsche curves when the LMP1 car would have appeared.
Yeah,
obviously huge contact for both of those cars, and we did also see one of the angles from Trick Sim Sports and how heavily they went into the wall as well. So anything can and does happen at Le Mans when you don't expect it.
And you don't expect it all. I think what happened is also the spotter could have, I don't know if they had a human spotter just watching it, or if the iRacing spotter was actually doing the job, because sometimes iRacing spotter can actually get you a few tricks, and totally got Anthony Winkleman by and completed an expectation over there, and unfortunately had that contact that ended both the Trick Sim Sports car race and might actually end the race of the number 4 as well.
If anything, I think that the LMP1 car will get repaired a little more effectively, a little more quickly than the GTE car will. So, riding on board now with this other GTE battle, SimRC.de with Biela still. This is one we've been watching for a while because it continues that Christian Koch is right there but cannot make any advance on Biela Racing.
Let's focus again on that battle per se. And yeah, I think it's still the same thing. I think right now Christian just knows that he's not going to fight for position. He's just going to follow that car and try to save as much fuel as possible coming to the final stand. I think that's the right mindset. He knows he has a lot of time left into this race as we're coming up to our final second hour of this time to 16 to 20. So into our race as we have that Biela Aeronix 1 car battling against the SrN Crimson car, and so far Christian Koch just staying behind, trying to save as much fuel as he possibly can.
Both Thrustmaster Movano Racing LMP1 cars on the pit lane right now because Tommaso Pala in the race leading number 3 has just come in for a scheduled stop, just fuel, but for a brief moment there both of them on the pit lane together. He carries on, will continue to lead the race by a minute and 40 seconds, will the number 3 car. Tough times for the number 4 car, very unfortunate incident for them. Elevates Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports into 3rd place in the LMP1 car, which now makes it much more difficult for SimRC.de to be able to snag 2nd place in the LMP1 championship. So, championship implications there as well with that bit of contact.
Yeah, that content changes every single scenario right now. I'm not gonna do the calculations again. It's 6 a.m. so we are around the hour. But so far, as I was saying before, during the content, that basically just seals, get the stamp, put in the envelope, and just give the runner up. For now, of course, you still have more 6 hours to go for the Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports car. So I think we're right around the hour. We just have less than 6 hours to go. Let's pick a car, David. You picked one. I'll pick one. Let me see if I can grab something. Should we grab the CMRC Crimson car driven by Christian Koch? Have a little bit of immersion with them.
Certainly, that'd be the most interesting view and some of our closest, most long-lasting racing out on the circuit. So that's what we'll do. We'll have a RaceSpot fan immersion with SimRC.de number 77 GTE car. riding on board there with the number 77 car, that's simrc.de, as they come into the pit lane. Rather aggressive little pit entry from them there, but I think that all works out. Great little battle that they're having for what's around 4th and 5th position in the GTE field. But looking over at the LMP2 category, well, we've got Fabrice Cornelis to have a word with us. We've spoken with him already in this broadcast, I do believe. He's making an appearance for Ava Vivatic in this race. And Fabrice, we saw you have a little incident, and it's cost the car 1 position, but it looks like it's managed to repair it and you guys will carry on.
No, please, don't remind me about it. God.
Sorry, hello Fabrice, welcome to the broadcast. You've done nothing interesting in the last 3 hours. What would you like to talk about?
No, really, that's
obviously anytime your car's running pretty well and you make you have an error like that, it's pretty tough, but it does look like repairs have taken very well. Pascal Stick's in the car now, and 5th position I think you'll be able to hold on to.
Yeah, we should. Like I said, I really had a heart attack because we actually have to finish P6 win the championship. I mean, they have to finish P6 because it's not really my championship, but just trying to help the guys out. But, you know, crashing the car then, I really got a heart attack there. Luckily, it was only 1 second optional repair, so it was a bit unlucky that, like, I was entering the right turn of the post curves and the weight transferred a bit to the rear and made me lose the car very quickly. I couldn't really react on that. Yeah, luckily we're still going and didn't really. I mean, we lost 1 position for it, but it doesn't really matter as long as they win the championship. I'm happy for them.
Right, winning the championship by 2 points and by 10 points is the same thing. Before that, you know, a few different teams have told us that as it gets hotter, the cars are getting a little bit more oversteery. That definitely looks like it's the case for the GTEs, but are you finding it's also true the LMP2s? And just a note for everyone that the track temperature is now up to 27 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, you really feel that on the track. I was doing night stints, then I went to sleep, and now I did kind of the sunrise stints, and you really feel the track getting heater and heater, and the grip getting less and less. So it's pretty cool of iRacing, having all of that right. But yeah, you really feel it, and it's also very tricky because 1 lap you can enter the corner when it's still pretty cold, and the other lap it's already a lot hotter, and yeah, that's also maybe a reason why I lost the car there a bit.
And we see on the broadcast right now that for the number 39 car, best lap a 3-minute 30. Last lap for Pascal Sticks a 3-minute 33. He's just about to complete another one. We'll see where that's at, but is 3 seconds per lap really the difference that the track temperatures are making, or is that something else?
No, that's really the difference. In the night, well, you can still run 32 easy, but you know, Pascal is just trying to bring it home safe at the moment. But in the night we could run 30 lows. So yeah, it's really the difference in track temp. Yeah.
And so, from your perspective, driving in this race with Ava Vivatic, how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, at that time I was actually still in PRT. I wanted to drive this race. I always like doing 24-hour races, endurance ones, especially with the HPD. This is like one of the only leagues you can still run that car in a pretty competitive way. So yeah, I asked the guys in Ava and they were up for it. They needed a driver anyway, so they took me aboard. And yeah, I just want to mention it's a guest drive, so I'm not joining Ava or anything. But yeah, I'm just having fun with the guys. All of them are very great and fast drivers, so yeah, having a good time.
And then you've dropped into that car suddenly with all of these championship expectations and hopes and stresses on your shoulders. Your first race in the car, but then they're fighting for the championship. What's that like?
Yeah, that's like I said, I'm really trying to take that in account and really try to do good moves and not do stupid dive bombs or something, because I know those guys have a championship on the line, and it's yeah, that's why I was so worried when I hit the wall there. But luckily it was only 1 minute, and we can still go and try to win it.
Well, I'll bring in Lorenzo and see if he's got any questions for you.
Actually, I think you just answered this question, but Fabricio, you're a very well-known P1 driver. We've seen you drive P1s into multiple races before. We've seen you on the previous championship driving the P1 and other special events. So comparing to the P1s, how big of a gap do you think it is from driving HPD to let's just say an Audi or a Porsche on the P1?
The HPD comes a lot more on the driving of the driver and less on the setup. Like the LMP1 is just a car you have to set up right. You can put a bad driver in the LMP1, it'll be fast if you give him a good setup. It's really a lot in the setup in that car, and the HPD comes a lot more down on driving skills, and like the setup is not that complicated, so yeah, everybody's kind of running the same, probably. Yeah, it comes a lot more down on driving, and that's just what I love more. I also don't have to worry about the boosting the world time. I just focus on my race, focus on my Twitch chat, just having fun with those guys, and yeah, you don't have to worry about anything really.
Are you live right now?
Well, I just stopped it actually.
Oh, okay. Well, I would have said hello to them. We can, some people from here jump over there, some people from there jump over here. But
I give them the YouTube link, so you're good.
I was gonna say go for the pod champs.
Fantastic. Well, who's supporting Ava the Vatican? Who do they have to thank?
Well, just all the drivers in Ava today. Thanks for letting me drive. We've been having a very great time, so thanks a lot for that. And Neo for hosting this, and of course you guys for the podcast, like always, putting an epic show again, so thanks for that.
Well, thanks so much for coming in, having a chat with us, even though you probably knew what our first question for you was going to be. So I guess thanks for being bold with that one, and good luck to you guys and the rest of your co-drivers here for the remainder. Now 5 hours 45 minutes left. Neo Endurance Series Race Spot 24 Hours of Le Mans.
Yeah, thanks guys. See you later.
There we go, Lorenzo. He knew that we were going to ask him about his crash.
Oh, of course he knew. I imagine how many. I was not gonna say ponchos, but how many apps he got into the Switch feed for actually doing that. But again, you can see he's fatigued, and also he said on the chat that he lost a little bit of focus. So it's really easy to lose focus in a race like this, especially having an incident that could damage your championship standings in your race like that. But still kept composure, still pulled up a few good safe laps, and delivered the car in a relatively safe position. Still far from fourth place, but within that top 5 margin is already good.
Yeah, indeed, because if they'd gone and lost just another 2 positions, suddenly they wouldn't have been grabbing enough points to maintain their lead to become LMP2 champions. What have you seen this time, Lorenzo? Oh, is it between Redface Racing and a remaining Thrustmaster Movano car?
No, I was going to say nearly MSI just got a cold brown coming into Porsche curves as the positive car just was on the inside, and the MSI just had to duck a little bit to the right and avoid a little bit of a crash that could have ended their race going to the Michelin wall.
MSI Esports coming into the pit lane this time, and they've got the SimRC LMP1 prototype behind them. They've got the Trick Sim Sports entry that was in that accident we saw before in front of them. And gonna have a look. Is that because a penalty has been awarded to Trick Sim Sports, or are they coming in for repairs? I'm not sure.
It is a penalty for Trick Sim Sport, yeah. Incident caused to car number 4. So I think they caused the collision maybe a 15-second stop and go.
Yep, I'm seeing that now. So a 15-second stop and hold for car number 95 causing a collision. And that was for that accident that caused severe damage, not just to themselves, but to the number 4 Thrustmaster Movano car that was running around third or fourth position in LMP1. So not sure if this is them servicing that stop and hold, or if this is just a scheduled pit stop for them, but that penalty has been handed down.
Scheduled pit stop.
Sim Sports.
Much more than 15 seconds, unless they're actually serving during the pit stop, which I think it's possible for you to do. But let's see what the marshals will say about that.
Yeah, so MSI Esports also on the pit lane right now. This is a full service stop for MSI Esports, and finally we see a driver change out of the number 75 car, because Mark Perez did so many laps behind the wheel of that car, it was not even a joke. Now Alejandro Sanchez is in the driver's seat and tasked with the rather difficult role of trying to track down Logitech G Altus Esports. So tyres at that stop for MSI Esports. The stop 3 laps ago for Logitech G Altus Esports that we didn't see. We were probably talking to Fabrice at the time, but there was no driver change, no tyres, just fuel for Logitech G Altus Esports. So they now have a couple of seconds on track over MSI Esports just by virtue of the pit stop times. Alejandro Sanchez, fresh tyres, absolutely in a position to try and chase down Logitech G Altus Esports, not just for the win of this race, but what would then be the GT Championship in the Neo Endurance Series Season 5.
Absolutely, and now we have to look at the real gap between the teams, because the relative says 1 minute 14 seconds and only 1 minute and 15 seconds between the Logitech's G Altus Esports car to the MSI Esports. But it's sometimes I take that with a little bit of pinch of salt, and if Alejandro Sanchez makes good use of that car, good use of that tire that he has new brand rubber. His car might be heavy at the very beginning, but if he puts the same amount of pace that Mark did, he's going to be in a really good position coming out to the final hours. But he needs to watch the Moreno streak coming up right behind him.
Yep, the Williams Gym Esports black car that we're riding on board with right now, 14 and a half laps into their fuel stint. I've seen some GTE cars go 14, some go 15. I don't think I've seen any go 16. I think it would be a very safe assumption that Moreno is going to have to come into the pit lane this time in about half a lap. And what was about a second to MSI Esports is now very rapidly 2 seconds. I don't think there was tyres for Williams Gym Esports at their last stop. I could be wrong, but I think they're doing well on their pit strategy, but on their pace out on track, MSI Esports have been a very, very fierce competitor and difficult for anyone to match, at least in the last 3 or so hours of the race.
So, David, apparently we got an interview coming up with one of the Target Freak Racing guys.
Yep, so David Barraclough joins us in the commentary box from Talk Freak Racing. And you've got 2 cars in this race, so talk us through the fortunes of each of them so far, as we're now within 6 hours left of the race.
Hi there, David. Yes, we have a LMP2 car and we have a GTE. And I'll start with the GTE. We had a very unfortunate beginning to the race. We ended up in the tyre barriers after about 5 or 6 laps. No fault for our own. The other car had a penalty, but our race was severely compromised, so it's all been about a recovery drive from there on in. I think we've done a reasonable job with the lack of straight line speed to get back to where we are, but we're just waiting to see if anybody else kind of falls back towards us in the last part of the race. As far as our other car goes, the LMP2, at the moment, yeah, they have done an amazing job. They're leading by almost laps, so it's just about conserving now, bringing the car home, and taking care of what they need to do to win this race.
Yeah, so obviously Mixed fortunes and a very difficult start to the race for your number 81 car there, but the 48, you're doing everything you need to do in this race. Very significant lead, looking like the race win is absolutely possible. But then it just all comes down to what Ava Vivatic doing right now. It looks like all the right things to win the race, but just nothing more you can do about the championship.
Yeah, I mean, the guys all knew this coming into the race, that the win was absolutely possible, and that was the primary aim. And then we would have to wait and see what would happen with the championship. The race has played out perfectly for us, basically. Everything's fallen into place for the win, and that's the primary goal. The championship would be obviously an amazing thing to achieve, but at the moment it's down to events elsewhere with what the Ava Vivatic car where they can finish. So yeah, we're keeping an eye on them, but we're not putting too much pressure on ourselves to try and force anything out on their own track. We just need to bring it home really from here.
Now, myself and Lorenzo are only recently in the commentary box. Have you been behind the wheel of either of the cars?
Yes, I've driven a triple stint in the 81 overnight, and I will be getting behind the 81 again towards the end of the race. Maybe in a couple of hours' time from now, we'll see. Yeah, looking forward to getting back out there and seeing what I can do on the track.
What have you guys managed to do? What preparation, what drivers have you managed to pull that you were so confident for your LMP2 entry and looking so dominant? Is it just preparation? Have you found a little magic, prayed to the right gods? What would you attribute the speed to so far?
I'd say a little bit of all of the above, I guess. When it comes to endurance racing on iRacing, you have to have a little bit of everything. You have to have, if you want to do well, you have to have a bit of speed, you have to have a good setup, and you have to have a bit of luck on your side. And I think it's fair to say we've had all three of those things this race. The guys have been flawless. I can't think of more than one or two mistakes here or there. There's been a lot of really good prep work done for this race, and the setup, it's been in under development, let's say, for quite a while now. We raced a few of these over the last year. I'm thinking back to last year's Majors Series 24 with a very similar team, and yeah, they've carried the setup through from that and improved it all the time. I just want to put a special mention out. Ronnie Nunez is unbelievably quick around this track, which is a really nice thing to have for us. He's definitely our Mr. Le Mans on the team. So having him able to show the other guys his lines and what he does in some parts of the track has also really helped. So, and obviously Dirk and Jake have both chipped in with some amazing quad stints overnight to make it so that we were able to for everyone to have sleep on a three-man team, which I don't think is no mean feat at all.
So thinking more broadly, not just about this race or Neo, what's in the future for Talk Freak Racing? Goals, aims, races or series that we might see you guys at soon? What's being penciled into the spreadsheet, so to say?
Yes, there is much spreadsheet action going on at the moment in TFR land, I can tell you that. What we've got coming up, I think the main thing that we've got on the books that should be starting soon is actually the next Sports Car Open Series, the GT Series, so look forward for that. Also, we currently have a car in the EJ Championship. We have an LMP1 there, so they're looking to get some good results in the second half of that season. And we have a number of other cars in things ranging from Club Sports to VLN to the official endurance racing series on iRacing. We're always looking for more series to do, but it seems that the next couple of months for us is going to be a little bit more laid back. We've had Neo, SCO, DGFX over the winter. And yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a break from more of the leagues, but we'll definitely be entering as many of the official series as we possibly can over the next few months, and looking for more top split, second split, third split wins in those.
And if there's any HJ events coming up, I'll make sure to let you guys know.
Oh, absolutely. We love those. So yeah, let me know.
Well, good luck to you guys. 2 cars in this race. One not having the best of times in GTE, but this one that we've mainly had our eyes on, number 48, Ronnie Nunez. Good luck to you guys. 5.5 hours remaining. And anyone you'd like to thank on behalf of yourself, Talk Freak Racing, and your drivers?
Oh yes, of course. I'd like to thank our partners for helping us out. We've looking to get some good support from them. So I'd like to thank Infinity Decals for taking care of us, and also I'd like to thank you guys for the broadcast you do. It's no mean effort to pull off 24 hours in a row to keep us all well entertained and to provide a great show for the iRacing esports network. So thank you very much for that. And finally, big thank you to the organisers at Neo for putting on such a great season once again, and looking forward to the next one.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming in and have a word with us. David Barraclough there of Talk Freak Racing. So, looking right now, it's just about 1/2 the hour. I think, Lorenzo, we're going to do another top 8 rundown of all of our classes. We've got our eyes on this GTE battle. So here they are, LMP1, Thrustmaster Movano Racing number 3, leading quite convincingly over SimRC.de's number 7 car. Third place in that class, that's where it's all kicked off recently with the contact that the number 4 Thrustmaster Movano Racing endured. They've dropped out of the top 8, and now third place solidly belongs to Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports. That'll be enough to keep them second place in the championship. It was a close dice between them and SimRC until that point. Fourth, elevated into the top 4, there is Wyvern Racing, the number 25 car. Team Chimera number 24 got 5th place, just as we see another swap for position between these GTEs. Been doing that a little bit, but SimRC have gotten themselves back there. But to the top 8 in LMP1. VRT E-Racing have 6th place. Cinetalk Esports up into 7th. And Ava Vivatic's LMP1 entry now finds itself in the top 8, in 8th position, 5 laps off the lead. Lorenzo, LMP2s.
LMP2s. Favorite car. Here we go. Talk Freak Racing LMP2 is in first place. So second place is TNT Racing, followed by IRDK Andrians. Team Horsey Vale is in 4th. Number 5 is Ava Vervatic with a number 39 car. Number 6 is Team Mad Racing. And our second to last cars is number 7 and number 41 Racing Center by Vibe Esports. And running out our top 8 on the LMP2s, Inertia Sim Racing Corsac.
And now to the GTE class, where we've just seen a switch for position. Still leading is Logitech G Altus Esports, the number 83 car. Simon Feigl behind the wheel of that. Second place, MSI Esports. We saw a driver swap for them. Alejandro Sanchez now driving the chasing number 75 car in a championship battle that continues to evolve, continues to keep us on the edge of our seats, and we just don't know how that one will play out towards the end. A great battle between those two teams, a season-long battle for the championship win. Third place, though, in class right now. Redface Racing have gotten themselves ahead of the Williams Gym Esports number 96 car. Still some pit stops to happen. That's not necessarily the fully adjusted order, but running third place right now, it is Redface Racing ahead of Williams Gym Esports. 5th is SimRC.de in their Porsche 911 RSR GTE, because they have just gotten past Bila Racing Team Euronics number 85 car, who are now in 6th place. 7th belongs to Srn Motorsports Ferrari. In 8th place is Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports, one of their GTE entries. And Lorenzo, that's our top 8 in all of our categories. Suddenly there's just a little bit more going on than there was an hour or so ago.
Hey, it's a little bit more dynamic in the past few hours. You know, you've seen the strategies finally dwindling down as we approach 5 hours left into this race. I think it's gonna get more dynamic in terms of, you know, moving up a slot or down a slot, coming out to the final 3 hours in my point of view. But for so far, it's more or less stacked. We had more action in the P1 class with the when they had the number 4 car, you know, moving up the spot with the Sorg, the number 18 Sorg car. So, but now the number 4 is out, so it's now more defined than anything else, if you have to say. The only question mark is between the 85 and the 77, both the Sim Crimson car and the Euronics number 1 car.
Yeah, indeed, that's one we're no doubt going to be watching all the way until the end, because that could swing to either team's favour as we get towards the end of the race. We're watching Redface Racing because they've had a good run in the last hour or so. They've been flying along pretty quickly and they're currently scored in 3rd place. Not so long ago they were down around 5th or 6th even. Now they're going to have to come into the pits either this time or the next time by, and that will probably shuffle them behind Williams Gym Esports Black and probably SimRC.de Crimson. But it could be pretty close because Redface Racing took tyres at their last pit stop, probably not going to take them this time, so it won't be a full length stop and they'll be there or thereabouts in this battle for 3rd position. One thing to think about though with tyres right now, Lorenzo, is the track temperature is rising. It's now almost 30 degrees Celsius.
It's almost 30 degrees Celsius. We're finally reaching that point, what I was saying, I think 1 hour and a half ago, where we're reaching the max temperature for this track, which I think will be right about the 38 to 40 degrees on track. Also, you can see the ambient temperature rising from 18 now to 20 degrees. That will help getting the track hotter and hotter by the minute and by the hour.
Really quickly to say that Redface Racing coming into the pit lane this time, I thought either this time or the next, so they're only doing 14 laps to a stint, is Benjamin Gonzalez. We've seen MSI and Logitech G Altus Esports, both of them doing about 15 to a stint. So Redface Racing in the pit lane right now. But back to what you were saying about the track temperatures, Lorenzo.
Yeah, but as the track is going to the temperature will rise depending on how the cars are actually positioned. How the cars not the cars, but the ambient is going to affect the track. So we can see now it's up to 30 degrees now. So expect it to get more hotter as the hour comes. I think by the midday it's going to be right around the top. And if I'm not mistaken, if Redface doesn't put tires in, they're going to be right about 30 seconds behind the Euronics 1 car. So I think if all pace goes all their way, Benjamin Gonzalez does a good stint, they could be knocking on the doors right behind pit stop, right before pit stop.
Yeah, so 3rd place coming into the pit lane for Redface Racing, but stacked up right behind them was Williams Gym Esports Black, SimRC.de Crimson and Bela Racing Team Euronics. So from 3rd, they come out of the pit lane in 6th place, even though it was only a rather speedy 34 seconds stationary for Benjamin Gonzalez. They're making ground, but not a huge amount, and it'll all come down to, in 5.5 hours time, where the different teams are on their fuel runs when the checkered flag falls. It's hard for me right now to count backwards and say, oh yeah, Redface Racing are going to have 1 pit stop less than Bela Racing Team Euronics or SimRC.de Crimson. It could be the other way around from that. So 3rd through to 6th, depending on how long they can go on their fuel stints, depending on where they are on their fuel strategy, depending on what they have to do with how many sets of tyres they take, that's all up in the air in the GTE category, which is very, very close, considering we've had now more than 18 hours of racing.
Yeah, absolutely. If I were to get an idea in terms of stints on how well each car is going to be at the very final hours, I think we should be looking at the next hour, not this hour. I think this hour will give us no information whatsoever. Just a few hints on teams pitting. If they put tires now, they might be going for triple staining, and then they're coming into their final 2 stints, maybe just double stint tires. But it's still not much to take off from with 5 hours and 23 to go. I think we should have a look when we come into 4 hours and 20, 4 hours and 10 minutes, so we can get a better perspective on how each team positions themselves coming out into the final crunch.
Yep, exactly, and we should have a look ahead of Red Face Racing here at the 77 and the 85 car, because we saw that change of position in GTE, and hey, suddenly they're in a very crowded place on the track. So there comes Ava Vivatic, there comes Talk Freak Racing, your 2 hopefuls in LMP2, and through comes one of the Thrustmaster Movano Racing LMP1 cars. So every car we've been talking about lately, suddenly they're all on screen in one shot there. But SimRC.de Crimson, Jürgen Frank, has managed to pull out just a little bit more of a gap on Viola Racing Team Euronics. Obviously been a driver change for the number 77 car relatively recently. No longer Christian Poch in the car, Jürgen Frank back behind the wheel, and he's been one of the quickest drivers in that car all day. So it's taken him to be able to shake the Viola Racing Team Euronics Porsche.
Yeah, I think he's been able to actually shake them off. Meanwhile, both Ava Vivatic, that's Ava Vivatic and the number 3, Thrustmaster Movano car doing their pit service. So, going back to the Jürgen Frank, I think he's been put in some really good spots in terms of traffic, whereas Lumer Mishwitz has been not. This one he's losing a little bit more time than usual, but looking at the lap gap, it's only advantage going to SimRC team.
Yeah, precisely. Stretched out a second and a half now. It's about 1.8. Different strengths, different setups, different cars. So that'll have a little bit of elasticity to it. It'll come and go. But the general trend is that Jürgen Frank has got just a little bit more speed right now. And ahead of them, Williams Gym Esports Black, 0.4 of a second quicker last time. So the 3rd place car, Aldo Massa, isn't being caught by these guys right now. So depending on, as I said earlier, where the fuel strategy goes, how many stops these drivers have remaining to the end, the Williams Gym Esports car is also a definite possibility to make up the last spot on the podium for GTE cars.
No, absolutely. Basically, that podium spot is quite wide open right now, so while the advantage goes a little bit to Williams GIM Esports Black car, we see Automasa doing some good stints. Not the fastest laps, it's fast laps, but not the fastest laps you really want to have. So they're putting themselves into a contention spot that they're keeping their car clean enough for them to be in traffic positions where they do not get compromised or lose time, whereas SimRC is just putting pedal to the metal and hoping everything just goes their way.
Yeah, precisely. Williams Gym Esports 4 laps into a stint, SimRC 8 laps in, 7 laps in for Viola Racing Team, and on their first flying lap after their out lap for Red Face Racing Team. So while they're in 6th for Red Face, of the 4 cars 3rd through to 6th place, they're the car carrying the most fuel. So they've got a strategy advantage there, but only if the checkered flag would fall within the 3 laps that is the difference between them and, say, for example, Williams Gym Esports. Definitely keep an eye on progress in a GTE category. But we've got a driver who I think would like to come up and have a word with us. So we have Daniel Benefield racing for Positive Sim Racing. He's in the number 45 car, which is our LMP2 category. And 10th place right now for you guys. How's that compared to your expectations?
Well, compared to our pace like in the first quarter of the race, like the first 6 hours. Like in reality, we should be at least top 5, probably in that fight for the podium in LMP2.
And what have been the major setbacks for you guys in this race so far? Obviously, we're now 3/4 of it in the bag. What's been the struggles that does find you lower than your expectations or what you feel your pace deserves?
Well, we had Javi had that incident in the Porsche curves about 7 hours in during the night, around I think it was around midnight in sim, and that set up like that gave us, I think, 18 minutes of repairs. So we've been 6 laps down since, and I guess the annoying thing in all that is that we're still 6 laps down. So we obviously have the pace of the leaders, but we just don't have the track position.
Yeah, last lap for our leader, Talk Freak Racing's 3 minutes 30. Your last lap, I believe, 3 minutes 32 for Positive Sim Racing. You guys had a really strong showing last round at Spa. Obviously, probably came into this round with a lot of expectations. But beyond this race, then, what's the goals for you in Positive Sim Racing?
We do have some things to work on over the off season. Obviously, the iRacing Le Mans 24 Hours in a few months' time, so there'll be a bit of focus on that as well. But yeah, we just need to improve some things in general, both on and off the track. And then hopefully we come back. Well, hopefully we secure top 8, and that's why we're still kind of trundling around down in 10th. And then we come back stronger next season.
Right, well, is there much else going on for you guys? Because the LMP2 category is probably one that's a little bit more spread out than we've seen in the LMP1s and the GTEs. And what are you hearing from Glenn in the car about the rising track temperatures now that we're getting deeper into the morning?
Well, the rear of the car's starting to become a bit looser. We could triple stint through the night, but I think we have had to go back to double stinting the tyres now, which is fine. We're still trying to pull in the kinetic car if we can, but we seem to be very, very similar paced. So unlikely that we'll get to them. But yeah, it's really just hoping something happens, really. I mean, that's all we can really hope for.
Obviously, if you're picking up a little bit more oversteer, if the back of the car's getting a bit more slidey, there's only so much you can do from the cockpit about that. I mean, if it's on throttle, then brake bias isn't going to do much for you. Is there any adjustments you've found that you think you can do to help that, or is it just all in the driving style?
Praying.
And has that been effective for you?
We haven't hit them all.
Right, well, behalf of yourself and Positive Sim Racing, anyone you need to thank, any shout outs?
Obviously, Glenn and Javi for jumping in. Borg as well. He's been spotting into the night, and he's come back this morning. So those guys, as well as our title sponsor, the University of Isabel I, and all of our other sponsors and supporters.
Well, thanks so much for coming in, having a word with us. Best of luck to you guys for the remainder of the race, and I'm hoping we'll see you guys again for Season 6 of the Neo Endurance Series.
Thanks, guys.
There we go, Lorenzo, another insight into the mind of a racing driver and another LMP2 team that wanted to have a word with us. So that was interesting, and we've learnt a little bit from that, I think.
Yeah, we do learn a little bit of positive. Positive. In terms of LMP2, they have Daniel Benefield and Glenn Key. I do race with them officials. They are very fast drivers. And I know Positive has a really big focus on trying to get their cars into the World Championship. They have really capable GT drivers. They have really fast GT drivers. So I think we could be seeing them into the GT category coming out into the VRS GT series. But yeah, they are a team that really for this championship they are not to the prestige of the team, how well they are, how good they are. I would normally see them fighting for a championship slot, but right now they're 6th in the standings. They could be bumping up a spot here and there, but so far not the best one for them, as Daniel just said they had an incident during the midnight hour. So what they can do now is just scavenge what they can from this race, and then just learn from the future and come back stronger next season.
Well, the number 20 car, VRT E-Racing, on the pit lane right now for what's going to look like a scheduled stop. I'd like to have a look at that one, because they're one of the teams that have been elevated a little bit by the troubles that beset the number 4 Thrustmaster Movano Racing. So now the purple car of the VRT E-Racing find themselves in 6th position. Dylan Ian Mann behind the wheel, and we'll see what kind of pit service they do this time for VRT E-Racing. Certainly not out of the reach of grabbing a top 5 is this team as it stands right now. So we'll see what they do at this stop. Up on the jacks, Lorenzo, they are taking tyres at this stop for the flying purple people eater.
Yeah, for the flying purple, I think it makes sense. I think they were on a triple stem from the previous one. Sorry, on a double stint whenever Dylan took over the car, so they're double stinting every single tires, and I think whenever Dylan passes off the car, maybe to Jason down in the final, I think if I'm not mistaken, there was another driver stinted to drive this race, but his baby was born, which was Ismail Yakubu. His baby was actually born last week, and congratulations, by the way, to Ismail. He's a good friend of mine. I know they're probably going to be double stinty, and whenever it comes to their final stints, they're probably going to then hand out to Jason and let him drive for the rest of the race.
Yeah, VRT E-Racing just wanted to give them a little bit of attention, because they're there and thereabouts, having their own race, and because they're not the top 3 or haven't been involved in any huge incidents in the last couple hours, just haven't spoken about them a whole lot. So just a little insight into how their race is trucking along. Came in from, I believe, 6th place, come out in 6th place. A little bit of air either side of them. And about, goodness, it'd be a minute and a half or so behind the car in front. So VRT E-Racing, that's what they're up to. Anything else out there on circuit, Lorenzo, that's drawing your attention? Because otherwise, SimRC.de Crimson and Bieler Racing Team Euronics, tried and tested. There's been no separating those two for 90 minutes.
I think the only thing that we should pay attention right now, it's not right now, but I think it's going to be for the final next few hours, whenever we're not going to be on broadcast. We're going to pass down actually to Tobias Brockman and Connor Umatic, if I'm not mistaken, is that the TNT Racing and IRDK Endurance battle they're having to 2nd place in the LMP2, because right now, even though the stints are different and they are swapping places after each pit stop they're doing, it's really going to be interesting if they're actually going to be within a same field gap whenever they come into the final stint and just do a let out on the track.
Yeah, indeed. Only one lap at the moment separating their previous pit stops. So they're on very, very similar fuel strategies, the 77 and the 85. And still watching VRT E-Racing make its way through some GT traffic and an LMP2 car as well. IRDK Endurance in there. And I think that's one of the Porsche Basel GTE entries have made their way through. It's still, I think, about 44 or 45 cars running out on track. So even though this big circuit spreads the cars out a bit, you probably, as an LMP1, don't have a lap where you don't encounter traffic. And here's IRDK Endurance trying to make their way around that GTE car, around the outside. Egil Sandfeld gets it done.
Finally gets it done, but again, what do we have to pay attention on is that now he's gonna actually go to the pits. He's gonna lose a few pit stops, and not a lose pit stop, but he's gonna lose time in the pit stop. Probably hand out to Marcelo Mayo or Jacob Sondergaard. And what I need to see is actually they're gonna put tires into their cars and just have it for a double set as well as for Breeze and David were saying early in their interviews.
Yep, IRDK Endurance into the lane, into the box. Fuel will start, and a driver swap there. So Jacob Sondergaard, as you mentioned, he gets in, gives the wheel a little wiggle to check that he's all seated correctly. And that's presumably going to take tyres at a stop where they change the driver. You don't have to, but normally when you're the driver getting into the car, you'd like a new set of tyres, not to jump into the car, head out onto the circuit carrying an old set of tyres from your teammate. And indeed, up on the jacks, IRDK Endurance go. Looking at the battle in LMP2 for second place, TNT Racing now come through into second place, IRDK Endurance now into third, but of course they're going to have the benefit of those new tyres. There's still a proxy war being fought for second place between TNT Racing and IRDK Endurance. Looking now at TNT Racing, and they've just been passed by the Ava Vivatic LMP1 entry. No dramas there. A great look on the little door. They got the drivers' names. I like that. I love a good paint that's been personalised specifically for a specific event. Sometimes we do that with my team for like maybe Daytona 24 or something. Just make up a special paint that's got all the drivers' names on the door. It doesn't make you any quicker, but it makes you feel better.
It makes it really good occasion to show off the colors and then show off a little bit of a special occasion paint. But alright, talking about paints, let's talk about paints really quickly since we have a small break into our action over here in the track. If you had to pick a paint on each class, that's a little bit of a challenge. If you had to paint a livery on each class, which one would you pick? Each class.
LMP1, that's easy. I've already said I love the purple on VRTE Racing. Camaro, Wyvern, Porsche Basel, Sim RC, they're all good. Honestly, Thrustmaster Movano Racing, no shade to them because they're honestly a very formidable team, very competitive, do all the right stuff. But the black and red, I don't know, it's not doing anything for me. The purple, VRTE Racing, that's fantastic. Simtalk Esports, they're not bad for a livery in LMP1, but yeah, my money's still on VRTE Racing if I had to have a poster on my wall.
Alright, then what about P2 and GT? I said each class.
I was giving myself a tiny bit of time to think about LMP2. Team Hoisingfeld's good. It's got some great patterns to it on the number 35 car. It's asymmetrical, but without being bad or ugly. It just looks dynamic, and it's pretty well balanced, the difference between the deep blue and the silver. And the silver's good, and it's got a little bit of patterning to it. It's not just a flat silver. So Team Hoisingfeld's good.
Okay.
Talk Freak's actually also really good. And I can't give the best paint award to the team that's leading. I mean, I could.
You could.
The blue is nice, the orange is nice, a little bit of bright yellow, which is also matching Ronnie Nunez's helmet very well. And of course, the open cockpit LMP2 cars is the one where you see the driver's helmet the most, unless we're doing onboards with the other class cars. So while they look kind of funny when we put up that graphic of the the paint that sits above where it says Talk Freak Racing and Ronnie Nunez there, as we get that one because our director's paying attention. Hugo, love you. Because the graphic doesn't have the driver's helmet, it's just the car. Whereas for the LMP1 cars and the GTEs, you don't see the driver's helmet in that graphic. The car looks empty for the LMP2s there. So in answer to your question, I'm giving it to Team Hoisingfeld.
All right, and then on the GT class,
this is the most difficult one. It's the field with the most number of cars, and of course, the GT cars are a simpler shape than the LMP1 or the LMP2 cars. In that way, I think the teams get more real estate to paint, if you could put it that way. So here's our leader, Simon Feigl, still behind the wheel of the Logitech G Altus Esports. I have to say that that's a pretty good one, and it also looks very good. I've seen it painted now on a dirt sprint car that's raced in Western Australia, and it looks good on that too. So it looks good in sim, and it looks good in photos. Who else is doing something good? I'm looking down the entry list. Graphite Racing's not bad.
okay.
The MSI Esports is interesting. Here's the Graphite Racing one. We see the little diagram there. The front view is not so exciting. The yellow stripes aren't strong enough on the front, but on the side view, you see the swooping of the yellow stripes and the logo in graphite written just below some of the air intakes there. It's not bad.
Sorry, so you would pick graphite.
Yeah, and they deserve something. MSI Esports from the front here, we see it's just all very solid blue. And the back view also not quite so interesting, it's just all white. But the side view, the blue and the white and the yellow, that's good, but it could just do with a couple more touches to the front and the back. I'm giving the David Haynes Lorenzo Bonda GTE Paint Award to the number 92 Graphite Racing.
Fair enough. Meanwhile, the Porsche Basel by Srn Motorsports LMP1 is in the pits right now doing their scheduled pit service. Really quick one, just feel for Florian Kluger as he comes out of the pits.
So the battle that they had with the number 4 car earlier on for third position is all just relaxed a little bit for Porsche Basel by Srn Esports. Florian Kluger pretty comfortably in third position right now. You had your eye on that one. What service did they get done?
Just fuel. They just put fuel. That was a 24-second fuel service, and actually came out fine. I think it was one of the quickest fuel services I could actually seen.
Yeah, well, we're at the top of the hour now. 19 hours done, 5 hours to go in the Neo Endurance Series Race Spot 24 Hours of Le Mans. Every hour brought to you live here on the iRacing Esports Network by Race Spot TV. We're going to take a fan immersion right now on board with this number 18 car, Porsche Basel by Srn Esports and Florian Kluger. 5 hours to go. This is your Race Spot TV fan immersion. So on board there with Florian Kruger, as I believe he has now gone one lap down on our race leaders, the Thrustmaster Movano racing car of Marcus Hamilton. You see them both on screen there. That's first and third position, but separated by 1 lap, which around here is 13.629 kilometers, so quite a distance. And it's one of the things that makes this race so famous is the circuit. It's a huge lap for compared to everything but the Nürburgring Nordschleife, probably the only circuit in active usage that really challenges the length of Circuit de la Sarthe here in France. Lorenzo, 5 hours remaining of the race, 19 hours and 7 minutes in the books. What are your eyes on for the remainder of this race? Because there's a few stories still to unravel and some battles still to happen as we head towards crowning the champions in all 3 classes of the Neo Endurance Series.
The top story around this race will be the battle for the GT win, because we have 2 teams right now battling for that win in the GT class. MSI Esports and Logitech Altus Esports, they're fighting neck to neck for the win of this race, and furthermore the championship of the GT class. The gap between each team on the standings is only 5 points. One has 67 points, the other one only has 62. Whereas in the other classes, we basically have a little bit of a shape between your championship winners for each category. Well, there's still a long to go, with the Trustmaster Movano number 3 car leading from start to finish basically into this race, and if all goes their way, they're gonna be closing with the championship on the P1 category. In the P2, there will be Torque Freak to celebrate, if all goes well, their P2 category championship. But let's not forget there are battles still going on in the mid-pack and also runner-up for the P1 and also the P2 classes.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that's happened is there's been a little swap for the lead of GTE. So MSI Esports, Alejandro Sanchez, currently being scored in the lead of GTE. Now they're going to have to come into the pits either the end of this lap or the next lap. They're on their, I think, 14th lap now of their stint, just ahead of Logitech G Altus Esports, because they have just taken a pit stop. Have Altus Esports driver swap there. Yannick Lapchin now behind the wheel, Simon Feigl getting out, and that's a battle that's getting just a little bit closer. There'll be no tyres for MSI Esports at their next stop. There'll be no tyres for Logitech G Altus Esports at their next stop, because they just took a brand new set for Yannick Lapchin. So I think the advantage is still Altus Esports, but the gap is narrowing down. After they've both taken their pit stop, what was a minute gap is now looking a lot closer to a 45-second gap. Altus Esports can't relax right here, because MSI Esports are slowly clawing the gap back and being scored, even if it's briefly, as leading some laps.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Right now, that battle between MSI Esports and Altus is just on the stint battle. Each stint near MSI is doing, they're actually shredding time between one car to another, and right now they are very similar strategies, fuel and tank wise, fuel and tire wise. They did the pit stops, put the fuel in, and put the tires in whenever they did their driver swaps. So right now it's just going to be who can capitalize on their stints more, and if they're going to be on a very similar fuel gap coming down to the final hours, and how close that will be. And also one thing we haven't mentioned, if any of those teams will need to have a splash and go by the end of this race.
Yeah, indeed. It's getting towards the point where my head calculator can almost work it out for the GTE field. We know they're doing 55 to 58 minutes to a stint. So right now, just under 5 hours to go. You'd call that just about 5 full tanks of fuel for a GTE car. Anyone who pits about now would be able to make it to the end with just 4 more stops after that. Of course, once we get into the last 4 hours of the race, we'll have a much clearer picture about how many stops remaining to get to the end we think each car needs, and therefore who's winning the strategy war between MSI Esports and Altus Esports. But also this battle that continues, third place on down, Williams Gym Esports Black, Redface Racing, SimRC DE Crimson, and Biela Racing Team Euronics. How many pit stops all of them have to take towards the end could have a huge swing in the order there. For example, Biela Racing Team Euronics, who are 6th right now, could end up in 4th if they've planned out their stints correctly. And I think they've recently had a driver swap there, because there's now Gregory Tansen behind the wheel of the 85 car. Last time we looked, I'm pretty sure it was Ludomir Shevitz behind the wheel. So Gregory Tansen now, and putting in some laps. He's on his first flying lap after the out lap since the most recent pit stop. So I don't have a gauge right now of the kind of speed that he's got in the 85 car, but if he can find maybe just half a second per lap more than what his teammate had, they're in contention there around the top 5 as well.
Yeah, if you are to look at nighttime laps for Gregory Tansen right now, he's been doing 347 to 348 on a daily basis, keeping the car clean. So I believe he has the capability of doing the same thing as his teammates were, but it will all come down whenever to the CMRC car do their pit stop service, and then see how each driver will compare themselves on their laps throughout the Le Mans track.
MSI Esports, the number 75 car, they're coming around the Porsche curves kind of area. And from how far they are into their stint, they're going to have to pit in this time. So right now, what is the gap they have over Logitech G Altus Esports? That's going to be very, very critical where they come out after this stop. It'll be a short one for MSI Esports and Alejandro Sanchez. So actually not quite as far around the track as I thought, coming through Indianapolis and Arnage now, but then after the Porsche curves they will be peeling in to the pit lane.
Yeah, must be, if I'm not mistaken, around
25 seconds.
27. Yeah,
25 seconds backwards from MSI Esports to Logitech G Altus Esports. We know that full tank of fuel and no tyres is about 35 seconds stationary. Add about 30 seconds as the delta for doing the pit lane speed limit through the length of the pit lane, and MSI Esports will come out. It'll be around, I'm going to say, 30 to 35 seconds behind Altus Esports, and that's a lot closer than the minute that they were behind before. Altus Esports are going to need to be very careful about how they plan out their remaining fuel stints, whether they're going to need a splash and dash, whether MSI Esports are going to need one, because 75 car is now in the pit entry, heading towards its pit box. Probably Alejandro Sanchez is going to stay behind the wheel, but that is your leader in GTE coming into the pit lane. And then this car we're watching here, the 83, will take the race lead from them. And here you get the pit stop information for the number 75 car.
Yeah, and meanwhile the Logitech 83 car just go by the start finish line, just overtakes the 75. 37 seconds of pit service. Right now they're not even fuel in for the MSI, so they might be coming out at about 40 to 45 seconds once they come out of the pits.
Yeah, interesting. There we go. 34.6 seconds, the number on your screen about the fuel. Straight from the working lane into the merging lane and into the fast lane of the pits here for Alejandro Sanchez, and hopefully we'll get the number up on screen, how far behind Altus Esports he now is after that pit stop. So MSI Esports behind on track by 35 seconds. Okay, so they have clawed it down a little bit. So they're behind on track by 35 seconds, but now carrying 3 laps more of fuel. Could be very, very critical later on. I'm sure both teams working on their numbers. Well, shifting pace from GTE class back to the LMP1s, I was saying nice things about their pretty car earlier, and I hope they've heard, and they're here to say nice things about me. We'll pull in Joseph Ringrose from VRT iRacing in the number 20 car, find themselves within our top 8. Joseph, how's the race looked so far for you guys?
Overall, we've had a pretty good race. I think we really expected to be 6th, and overall, you know, we got up into 3rd at one point on a bit of a slightly different strategy compared to everyone else. But yeah, overall, we're pretty happy with how the race has gone so far.
And just recently you've gained a position at the expense of the number 4 Thrustmaster Movano Racing LMP1. You've managed to stay out of most problems yourselves?
Yeah, we had a couple of issues in the night that were our own fault. They weren't due to traffic or anything, so it wasn't anything major, just a spin. So cost us some time, got a bit of damage from it. But yeah, we've just tried to run our own race and stay out of everything, and you know, we got up to be 6, so we're pretty happy with how it's gone.
What amount of that success would you attribute to the striking purple colour of the car?
Had a decent amount. I mean, 6th is pretty good for, if you look at what we've had throughout the season. It hasn't been the best season, but it hasn't been the worst season. So yeah, we're just looking to push on. We're running the numbers at the moment to see if we can get auto qualified for next season. We're going to need a bit of a miracle at the moment. You know, we're going to have to get past Chimera and have Simitok and PSR to have their own issues. So, still up 4.5 hours left-ish, but you know, we're going to be doing everything we can to try and secure a spot.
15th in the LMP1 standings coming into this round. Your best result came at Interlagos. You're definitely going to eclipse that here. And so how many positions are you hoping to be able to jump?
At the moment we're running the numbers, and I believe we're 11th currently as it stands. So a few more points in front of Virtual and Simitok. So if we can maybe try and get past Chimera on track and see how it goes, Dylan's going to be in for another stint. And then we'll see what happens with regards to who go in the car after. But really we can only do what's in our power. We can't unfortunately force anything else on anyone else. So,
talking about your driver lineup, I think my friend Lorenzo's got a couple of questions for you about that.
Yeah, I have just one question, because I am a little bit acquainted with some of the people in that driver lineup. I know Ishmael was supposed to race this race, if I'm not mistaken, but he had the baby Raj, if I'm not mistaken, Joseph.
Yeah. I mean, we've known for a while that it was going to be very tight whether Ismail would be able to race. So obviously we covered that, you know, a bit well before.
Yeah, you'd get a couple of months warning about that.
Yeah, we've had a couple of months notice, so we haven't been just forced on with Ismail. But yeah, massive congratulations to Ismail.
And the addition of Dylan is just for this. Dylan Scriven is just for this race, or are you guys thinking about long term and adding him to the team?
Dylan's been a guest driver with us for a couple of races now. He's not a driver of the team, but you know, he's very close to us. You know, he raced Daytona with us, and he's been doing this with us. So yeah, Dylan's sort of just someone who's in and around, but not actually a team member.
All right. I think that's all the questions I have to you, David. You can wrap this one up.
Yeah, last thing I'm curious about here is some of the teams are telling us that this particular race, they felt like they've been preparing for forever. From your perspective, VRT iRacing, how long has it been on your radar to, put in the practice laps, iron out the setup, all those kind of things for this race?
Well, we've put a good couple of months into this event. We had the 24 Hours of Le Mans in Essia last month, so that was essentially a complete race simulation for us, and we ended up winning that event. That was really good preparation. We knew what we needed to change from the setup going into this event. And obviously not having the best of races in Spa, not even essentially starting the race. We just got onto Le Mans straight away and just focused on there ever since then, because the double points was something that we've marked out at the end of the season. It's a big event generally in the iRacing calendar, and with those double points it could really help us with the auto qualification. But if not, we can always go to attempt to qualify for next season if it all goes ahead.
Right, well, still holding on to 6th place there for you and your teammates. Just wrapping this up, who helps VRT iRacing go racing?
Yeah, just obviously a massive thank you to Dylan, Jason, and Joe, and obviously Ismail for helping us prepare for this event. A couple of other guys who've been helping out around the team, I won't name them, but they know who they are. Massive thanks to them, and the organisers, to Neo, and you guys for putting on a great show as always.
Cheers. Well, there was Joseph Ringrose of VRT, number 20 car on your screen right now, running 6th place in LMP1, on track for their best result of the season.
Yeah, they're bound to get their best result. One of the things I was saying about VRT, and when I follow them closely, is that they're actually a team that has been quite on a rise for LMP1 class. They're all active in official races. They do talk a lot. They do have the experience on LMP1. They know how to manage the field itself, but they have been getting unlucky in some of these races, so not having the best results, but still within contention. And let's hope they can actually have a good top 10 finish, or maybe a top 5. Who knows?
Yeah, well, if you're following along and you've got a favourite car or a favourite driver, or you're just wanting to have a little bit of a deeper look into the numbers, head to live.neo-endurance.com, because we've got the live timing there. Lets you know where all of the teams are, what they're doing with their strategy, and also tells you more about some of the penalties, though it's been a while since a penalty has been handed out. So, and thinking about some penalties actually, and race control and all of those kind of things, we'll have Neil Heckens join us once again. And Neil, 4 hours 35 minutes to go. It feels like the race takes forever, and then you blink and it's flown by, right?
Yeah, exactly. Last night I thought, oh man, we still have 18 hours to go, and then in the morning you have breakfast and all of a sudden it's 4.5 hours to go. Indeed, it goes by very fast.
Well, since we last had you on the broadcast here, a few things transpired out on track. I think the biggest one I could ask you about from an organisation and a race control perspective and all those kind of things, Trick Sim Sports and the Thrustmaster Movano Racing number 4. What does an incident like that look like from a stewarding perspective?
Yeah, these kinds of incidents are always quite difficult. Of course, there's always two sides of a story. Yeah, luckily now we have the time to hear both sides out, and then we look on what's happening, and we came to the decision that we made.
And of course that was a 15-second stop and hold for the number 95 Trick Sim Sports. What was the what was the name on that one? It was causing a collision or unjustifiable risk, or what?
Causing a collision, yeah.
And actually, just meddling in really quickly, I'm looking at the process. Is that penalty still undergoing? So it needs to be served, or has already been served right after they had to do the pit stop service?
No, so we came to that decision, but we noticed they're already retired in that sense. So that's why it's still open.
Oh, okay.
Well, as you from your seat, you've got 4.5 hours remaining of the race. What kind of things do you, as part of the Neo organising, race control, promoter, all of those hats that you wear, what kind of things keep your attention? Where are your eyeballs looking, and what have you got to be on top of?
Yeah, so of course we're always monitoring the track action. That's something that we just keep an eye on at times, and if it's relatively quiet as it is now at the moment, knock on wood, I just start looking into a bit of reflection of today and the season as well. Also looking at what are topics for next season, how can we improve the series, and also what direction do we want to go in that sense.
You've read my mind, because that was exactly what I was going to start asking you about. If you could, I guess, sum up season 5, what's been different about this season than previous ones? What's worked? What are you going to have a closer look at? And any, I guess, maybe tiny sneak peeks you could give us about potential changes that are possible for the future of Neo and the Endurance Series?
Yeah, sure. It's I think one of the biggest learning points or lessons that we've learned this season was the grid size. More or bigger is not always better in that sense. So, and especially with these LMP1 cars who accelerate so fast and close so fast to the other cars, that it's not always good to have as much cars as possible on the track. So looking into lowering the grid size a bit. Not sure what the number will be, but I think previously we ran around 45-ish, 45 to 48, something like that. I think that's kind of the sweet spot. Also, I think learning how to work with the P1s, I think, was a big lesson for all the drivers this season. And also, as race control itself, I think we've also learned about, we keep learning every race about how to look at incidents, how to make decisions, how to be as consistent, try to be as consistent as possible. And I'm also looking for ways to improve that, which is I think quite difficult within sim racing, because there's no real learning route you can go, like in other sports as a referee. But probably have to learn from real life stewards. So I will see if I can arrange something this off season. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Neil. Sorry, I want to actually ask you a question about this.
No, go ahead.
Are you looking to mirror something or grab something out of the real sports events, like a sports car or the Tex Plus car, or how the VC organization, not today's VC, but VC back in the day where they had more LMP1 cars, like back in 2016, 15, or they had the hybrids and the LMP ones. Are you looking to organize the grid in that fashion, or are you trying to get a better idea?
Yeah, so the WC has always been one of the main inspirations for us, but we're not necessarily want to mimic some other real life series, but yeah, we do take inspiration from a lot of real life series and just cherry pick on what would suit us and see and iterate on that. Yeah, I'm looking for next season. I'm looking for, or try to keep some consistency in the classes for change in that sense. So keep the current classes, or to try something completely different. But it also depends, yeah, on what direction we want to go.
Once again, that heads towards what I was, I guess, interested to hear about, and I'm sure some other people who are following the series or following the broadcast and might, I guess, be thinking about joining or thinking about watching in the future might want to know about, is obviously some of the teams we've spoken to, a lot of them, they're not so concerned about winning their championship at this race. Maybe they're out of the hopes for that, but a lot of them are very much got their sights on locking in an auto invitation to the next season or whatever. If you're going to bring the grid sizes down a little bit, underneath the 50, I assume that a lot of the registration spots are going to become a lot more tightly sought after, a lot harder for people to get their hands on. And you think you'd stay with a 3-class series?
Yeah, I think 3 classes, at least more than 2 classes, add a lot to the dynamics of the race, especially if you're in the middle class. Yeah, I think, yeah, it would be a pity indeed it's always a tough decision to balance trying to let as much people in and have as much people as possible to enjoy our league, but at the same time you also want to make sure that the on-track action is enjoyable as well, and that sometimes you can do that by just lowering the number of cars so that everybody has more time to think and react to certain situations on the track. And I think we have seen this season that having 55 cars on track on Interlagos or Suzuka, for example, is quite much.
Lorenzo, any last thoughts from you?
Yeah, my only thought is the question that people want to know. The audience has been asking, Neil, is the MA confirmed for next season?
Yeah, so if we keep the GTE cars, which is, yeah, I would like to say likely. I mean, it's one of the big possibilities that we keep the current classes, so the M8 would be added. But if we go the other route, then I'm not sure if we would use the M8 or the GTE class total, but yeah, it's very undecided. It's just I have just a couple of ideas floating around, and then I need to figure out what would be a good direction to go with the league.
Perfect.
Thanks so much once again coming in, having a word with us, Neil Heckens, Neo Overlord. That was your title earlier in the broadcast, and I think it's rather fitting.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the race, Neil. We'll catch you around, maybe after the race, maybe some other time. I'm sure you'll be around, and you're always happy to have a word, which is fantastic to hear, not just from some of the drivers and the teams, Lorenzo, but also to hear from the organisers and get an insight into race control that some other leagues might not give us.
Yeah, you really get to see how their work ethic proceeds throughout races like this. We know 6 hour races are more, could be more hectic because it's lesser time and you're more prone to action, but races like this that are longer and you're already leaning to a scope where you're trying to organize yourself to the future and stuff. It's really good to see, not only pick up from race director, but also organization's perspective itself too.
Yeah, fantastic. And also good to hear from him just as we come towards the end of the season. His thoughts about it as a whole. It's fantastic to hear. We were talking to Neil when it was hour, which is when I've decided when I like to do a top 8 rundown. So slightly belated, but here it is, the top 8 in every category. So leading overall, Thrustmaster Movano Racing. We saw part of it while we were talking to some people. SimRC.de have found some pace. Maybe there were some problems for the number 3 car. That lead is now down to just 15 seconds as SimRC.de come into the pits, and they will probably hold on to second place because Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports in third place are a full lap down. Fourth place is Wyvern Racing, who moved themselves up into fourth there, 2 laps off the lead for the number 25 car. Fifth place, Team Chimera. Sixth place, we've spoken to them recently, VRT E-Racing. Seventh is Simitok Esports, and 8th is Ava Vivatics, number 23 LMP1 car. Your favourite car now, Lorenzo, it's time for the LMP2s.
Now let's go for the holy beloved, the HPD cars, the P2 category here in our 24-hour of Le Mans. Torque Freak Racing just coming out of the pits, very fun. Toolden taking over the car right now from Ronnie Nunes, is in first place with a good gap against the IRDK Endurance. Second place, third goes to TNT Racing. Meanwhile, fourth is Team Heuskenveld. Ava Vervatic is fifth. Sixth is Team Mad, driven by Chris Wood. Racing Center is number 7. And rounding out your top 8 is Inertia Scene Racing Corsair.
Yep, so that's your top 8 in the LMP2. Thank you, Lorenzo. And we look down to the slowest, but not the least, in fact, the most numerous category of cars in this race, the GTE machines, and leading that one is Logitech G Altus Esports, the number 83, with Yannick Latchin behind the wheel there, still being pursued by MSI Esports, the championship leader, the number 75 car, 40 seconds behind, and not closing the gap in the last lap at least. Third place is Williams Gym Esports, but you can see from the times that they've only got 11 seconds over SimRC.de, who have only then got about 15 or 20 seconds over the car we're watching right now. Bila Racing Team Euronics, who are then only 10 seconds ahead of Redface Racing. And then it's Srn Motorsports and Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports rounding out your 8 in the GTE class. But this is a battle I want to watch. 5th and 6th, Bila Racing and Redface Racing. Redface and Benjamin Gonzalez have been closing in just a little bit, not in the last lap or the 2 before, because Redface Racing have just come out of a pit stop. But they've come out just 11 seconds behind Bila Racing Team Euronics, and I wouldn't be surprised if they start to close that gap down a little bit. This is the battle for 5th place. Sorry, I had to take a sneeze there. That snuck up on me.
Whoa, coming out of nowhere. Archeoni out of nowhere. The sneezes. Sneaky sneezes.
Yeah, I'm all good now, Lorenzo. But yeah, the battles in GTE continue, keeping it all just a little bit closer than any of the other categories. LMP2 spread out a little far, but here, you know, we saw all on the same lap, all within just a couple of seconds, anything could bring it together again. Second or third or so through to 6th.
I think right now the battle between the 4th, 5th, and 6th places. Sorry, 4th, 5th, and the classes. I don't know how Redface is actually. It's far behind them, so it's kind of out of contention. But either way, the battle between CMRC and Crimson is very similar to what was actually with 7 hours ago, 7 hours and a half to go, when they were actually fighting for gaps, not close to one another when they were switching places. But right now it came back to ground zero. They're gonna have to work themselves back up. The fuel difference is actually very similar between one another. but I think the gap goes slightly to Jürgen Frank because he's doing better drives, getting cleaner laps and putting the car into better spots compared to the Aeronix car.
It's one of those things, just where will the checkered flag fall? Will any of these teams have to make a splash and dash? How many of them are going to have to save fuel, extend a stint a lap or so to make it to the end without needing a splash and dash? Because obviously there's 11-second gap between Biela and Redface Racing. Biela couldn't afford a splash and dash that Redface didn't have to take and still hold on to that position. The margins are starting to get fine as we approach having only 4 hours left of this race. This race being the season finale of Season 5 of the Neo Endurance Series. This is where the championships in each class are being decided. This is the race spot 24 hours of Le Mans. Lorenzo, have you been crunching some numbers?
Yeah, I've been working some head calculations right now. So, right now we're at 4 hours, 18 minutes into this race. And I'm starting to get a little bit of an idea on the GTE section. So far, since I've been around 50 to 55 minutes on the GTE class, so for now I think the ones who are in the danger zone of having a splash and dash or have a pit stop with shortened field and get the rest of it for the final half hour might be SimRC Crimson, Biela Racing Aeronix, and maybe, just maybe, the Williams JIM car, because Redface is on the 3 laps in. They're probably going to have about the 3 hours and a half. They probably should be just fine when coming down to the final hour. No need for pit stops.
Yeah, seems logical. Redface Racing, of those 4 cars involved in that battle for the last step on the podium, the team at the moment carrying the most fuel. Tyre strategy is also going to be something that comes into play because Biela Racing Team on fresh tyres, Jim Esports, SimRC DE Crimson and Redface Racing didn't take tyres at their most recent stop, so it'll all come down to if any of them want to triple stint those at the end to try and hold on to track position at the expense of their speed out on circuit. And the track temperatures now, Lorenzo, up to 33 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, as I was mentioning before, you're finally reaching that top temperature on the track. So right now we're reaching midday on race time, so coming down to our final hours. And I think the track still has a little more to give, should be reaching about the 37 to 38, maybe with a little bit of unluck, the 40 degrees Celsius. And then the tires become a little bit of a soapbox, soap tires if they come into Porsche cars. They need to do some tire management to make sure that steers do not go in vain.
Yeah, seeing these deltas on the screen right here. Redface Racing were closing Biela Racing Team Aeronix earlier, but since the driver swap to put Gregory Tansen in, Benjamin Gonzalez just hasn't quite had the pace to close that gap down any further. So that's very interesting as we approach the pointy end, the part where the points get paid. There's no points handed out at the half distance. There's no points after 6 hours. It's just all the points for the finishing result. And of course, being a 24-hour race compared to every other race in the season, it's a 6-hour race. It's double points for Le Mans. So every position matters a lot to these teams because it's in effect double the points difference than what they would have got at any normal round. Some championships still to be awarded, still to be decided. The biggest one of them that we're watching at the moment is the battle for first and second in GTE, where whoever finishes ahead of the other between MSI Esports and Altus Esports becomes the champion, and they are running 1 and 2 in the race right now. So that's one that anything could still happen and probably will in that battle.
Anything could happen in this battle. And David, Alejandro from the MSI 25 is having some connection issues. Am I seeing this?
Haven't looked myself, I might cast my eyeballs there. The broadcast can't really look there if that's in fact what's happening, but it will. Here's Alejandro Sanchez, looking good to me in the MSI Esports. I'm sorry if I said less than flattering things about their livery earlier. It looks alright. Second place, they wouldn't want any technical issues, any problems, any glitches to hurt their race. It's been pretty flawless up until this point. So if that was a risk for Alejandro Sanchez, well, I hope that they'd have another driver on hand ready to jump into that car for MSI Esports if they needed it.
Yeah, I was seeing Alejandro having some blinks around the track, so we have to see what the race control will say about that. If he continues having some instability in his connection, that could throw away his race and maybe the championship. But that's the only thing we got to keep our eyes on the track. There is nothing more else to look for around the track. I think the only thing also might be Red Face Racing and the Biala Racing Team Aeronix 1, which is not far of a gap between one another.
Yep, so plenty happening GTEs. P2's not a whole lot happening there. In P1s, we were watching the gap where SimRC.de were closing down Thrustmaster Movano Racing, but SimRC have since had to pit and are now a minute 22 seconds behind, so they get close after Thrustmaster Movano pit, but then when they have to pit themselves, suddenly the gap comes out to quite a significant amount, nearly a minute and a half. Claudius Veed, I think he's pretty recently gotten behind the wheel of that car. It was someone else earlier. So obviously plenty of drivers for SimRC.de, not just in their GTE cars, but in their LMP1 as well. And all of them probably pretty equal to each other. I can't think of a one standout driver for SimRC.de, although Jürgen Frank in the GTE car has probably been the strongest driver that I've seen recently.
I think if I have to pick one out of the SimRC, I would say, believe it or not, I think I'm going to give with Claudius Veed, because Claudius has been really consistent on his lap, hasn't been considering the laps I'm seeing for this kind of track, hot track we're having right now. He's overperforming, and at some point he was even making some noises down in the number 3 Trustmaster Movano car.
Yeah, so I guess it's hard to know exactly what's happening for the LMP1 class and the GTEs. Watching this one here, Jürgen Frank, I was saying plenty of speed, and it's looking like it now. Look at those laps. Lap 303, 304, 305, all of them cumulatively pulling about 2.5 seconds out of Aldo Nassa. So, and they're both cars that have got a lot of black, a lot of yellow in the livery. Although one's a Porsche, one's a Ferrari, so we're not going to get them confused. Also, there's plenty of blue on the Williams Gym Esports livery these days as well.
Yeah, but one thing you have to consider on this thing right now is that Jürgen Frank, even though he's been faster compared to Otto Massa, and now you've just seen last lap, he actually shredded 2 seconds from the Williams Gym Esports black car, that he has to pit in the next 2 laps. So all that gap he has built up, if you have to compare it, is only relative. Whenever the Williams Gym Esports black car do their pit, and then we can have a better overview of their battle for 3rd place into the category.
Yeah, as you said, SimRC.de car and Jürgen Frank carrying 4 laps less fuel than Williams Gym Esports, and of course around the 13-kilometer lap here for a GTE car. 4 laps is, I guess, nearly 15 minutes. It's nearly, that's a quarter of a stint. So that's not just the 8 seconds we see here that Jürgen Frank needs to make up, but then also the fuel deficit, the stationary time on the pit lane. If a just fuel stop for a GTE is 35 seconds, if it takes 35 seconds to fill the tank, Well, a quarter of that is about 8 or 9 seconds. So that's, you can add 8 or 9 seconds to this gap of 7 seconds here. And that's the kind of deficit that Jürgen Frank is going to have to make up, not just on track, but in the strategy deficit as well.
Yeah, I think there's this deficit they're probably gonna have. I think it works on their favor. The pit stops are still are about to go on in the next maybe 10 minutes for all the cars around in their current stints. Maybe 10 to 12, 15 minutes of sorts, because some of them are on 10 lap stints, some of them are on 9 lap stints. So that deficit that the CMRC car is actually shredding bit by bit is actually working on their favor, because there's no cars whatsoever to endanger them or to face them in battle like the Euronics team was several laps ago.
Alright, so 13 laps in stint now for CMRC.de. Probably not going to pit this time, might pit next time or the time after, but there's no more than 2 laps of fuel left in the car for Jürgen Frank. Right on board here, and I still love those Christmas tree shift lights in the 911 RSR, the way they meet in the middle, all the pretty colors. Have you got favorite shift lights, Lorenzo?
I have to look at the cockpit, but if I have to pick the best cockpit shifter lights, all right, it's not in the game. If I ever do see it, I'm probably gonna have cry like a baby. Is the NSX GT3 car.
Fair enough. You can see on your track map right here, number 77 we're riding on board with Jürgen Frank, and the car is chasing down the 96. That's Williams Jim Esports Black, 3rd place in class. Aldo Massa driving that right now. And while the gap is, around 6 or so seconds, huge lap like this, you can see that it doesn't look like much at all when they're together on the same straight now. The 96 will enter the first of the Mulsanne chicanes, and not long will it be before the CMRC.de car joins them. And it's a beautiful historic circuit here, plenty of changes to it over the years, but still maintaining a lot of the character. And to win at Le Mans for any team, for any driver, for any manufacturer is still a huge thing to be able to say. I think that's no less the case in the Neo Endurance series either.
Yeah, both in Neo or real life, I think the most glamorous endurance event you can race on is Le Mans. Not because it might be the oldest and the most traditional endurance event you can have around racing, but because it has the mythical aspect. Like here in Neo, we've seen a few things happening with the drivers. We've seen that in real life, like with Toyota, 1 lap away from victory and then their car just died. So it's a really interesting balance, to see drivers knowing the importance of this race and putting the time to make sure they do well in this race.
Yep, watching from Jürgen Frank now, you can see the Mulsanne corner has just come through. It's basically the furthest point of the circuit from the pit straight. Virtual Motorsports LMP1 Audi, the sole remaining Audi running in the LMP1 class, goes and zips on by. I have to wonder, and probably stay with this one until they get to the main straight, because I'm really interested to see if CMRC.de have to pit this lap.
And judging by the way Jürgen is actually shifting his car, he's pushing for it, so there is a good likelihood I'll give a 70% chance.
It seems like some of the drivers pushing really hard will do 14 laps to a stint, and if they want to just manage the fuel a little bit, just be careful with it. 15 laps isn't a huge fuel save, but it requires either driving with a smooth style or just a little bit of lift and coast around here and there. There goes the VRT e-racing car on through. Now there's no corners to separate Jürgen Frank from the pit entry. Is he coming in this time? Yes, he is. SimRC.de from 4th place comes into the pit lane. You're watching iRacing Esports Network, and we are RaceSpot TV. I'm David Haynes, alongside me Lorenzo Bonda, Hugo Lewis in the production with all of the cameras. And in just 4 minutes time, we're going to be leaving you. We're going to be switching across to the final section of the live broadcast. We'll hopefully get that one put in the YouTube chat as well, so you can click on across, follow this race to its exciting conclusion, and learn who is going to be the championship winners in the LMP1 category. Will Thrustmaster Movano Racing pick up their 5th win of the season to become champions? Can Ava Vivatic hold on in LMP2 to just pip Talk Freak Racing for the LMP2 championship? And what will happen between MSI Esports and Logitech G Altus Esports? Who will become GTE champion? It's all to be decided in the last part, in the last 4 hours. We're going to have some people join us for that one, and one of them's Connery Maddock.
Hi, hello, I am here. An eventful night for me. Got my good amount of sleep in, which I'm sure you're yearning for right now, David and Lorenzo, but I'm pretty fresh, just getting myself caught up on exactly what has happened during the night there, as we see the SimRC car head themselves out of pit lane. But how have you guys been? Because I'm obviously still catching up on this race, and just tell me what's happened during the night.
Well, I mean, I've been here now 4 hours since I rejoined us. I had a good night's sleep too, actually. Did the first 4 hours and then straight up to bed. It was real comfortable. But I mean, the best I can say is that Thrustmaster Movano Racing number 3 still lead. The number 4 cars got taken out not so long ago in an incident with Trick Sim Sports, the number 95 Ferrari GTE, and effectively ended both of their races. That's the most recent large incident we've had. It's promoted some of the teams in LMP1 further up the list than we'd, I guess, normally expect to see them. The exit of Odox Motorsports from LMP1 and the number 4 Thrustmaster Movano, and I guess you see Wyvern Racing here in 4th, Team Chimera coming into the pit lane from 5th, and so some of the teams in LMP1 that, you know, maybe don't always trouble the top 5 are now on to have their best results in LMP1. Over in P2s, not a whole lot going on. Ava Vivatic were in 5th, made their way up to 4th. Fabrice Cornelis reversed very low speed into a barrier, knocked the rear wing off. That cost them some time. That's put them back into 5th place, but we crunched the numbers, and even with Talk Freak Racing winning this race, Ava Vivatic can afford 6th or higher to still clinch the championship. So 5th place for them is all they need to do in this race to become the Season 5 champions. And outside of that, I'm not sure a whole lot has happened in the LMP2 category. GTEs, there's plenty of them, and that's where the real excitement is right now, I'm feeling, especially around the last podium spot. But I think that's about it.
Yeah, no, I'm also obviously championship sort of situation there in GTs. Of course, with MSI and Altus being as close as they are on points, it's basically that wonderful situation that we get in the finale. It's what if one car finishes ahead of the other one, then they're the winner of the series. That's the situation that we have for P1 and P2 in your GT category right now. I'm just having to look to see where Triton Racing is. They're way down the field in mid-pack, so they are just looking for some divine intervention right now, going into these last 4 hours for them to win the championship. But we are just a couple of seconds away now, David, before we get 4 hours to go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Tick-tock. 4 hours remain of the Neo Endurance Series Race Spot 24 Hours of Le Mans. You can see it on the clock right there at the start-finish line. So that's the end of this segment of the broadcast. Do click across, do join us here live on the iRacing Esports Network for the last 4 hours. Click across, tune in. It's going to be an exciting one. It only gets more tense from here. I'm David Haynes. Alongside me for all of these last 4 hours was Lorenzo Bonda, Hugo Lewis, our cameraman, all of the graphics, all of the production by him. Can't do it without him. And then also a lot of our partners here from RaceSpot TV. That's TrackCams22 by Istvan Balov, Andreas Werner and Vern Design, Simon Grossman, Nick Tisson, RaceSpot Live Timing. Their support greatly appreciated. From me, from Lorenzo Bonda, that's goodbye. Well, actually, I'll be around in the next 4 hours, but Lorenzo, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you in just a bit.